Well, it didn't really mean anything last night, but that Monday Night Football game was about as entertaining as one could hope, even though it ended up being a bit lopsided in favor of the Detroit Lions. Good morning. Welcome in. We're happy to have you. Lucas Jackson and me till 1 o'clock. Pete Nakos is going to be on the show from On3 Sports. Is he the Adam Schefter of the portal? Who is the portal king when it comes to breaking the portal news? Has anybody established themselves in this new world order of college football free agency that we will deal with on an annual basis?
Yeah, Pete's getting up there. He is all over the place with the transfer portal and coaching turnover updates that are rampant right now across college football. That game last night got me walking down memory lane at the end because Joshua Dobbs comes in. Oh. And who does he keep throwing the football to? Juwan Jennings.
Over and over.
Yeah. Scores at the end. They don't get the onside kick. Tough day for Niners kicker Jake Moody.
No.
Thank you, Jackson.
I mean, I've got a Vols pullover on today. I guess I don't have any say in this. Yes, I'm very happy for you all. You don't have many good Vols football vibes right now after the way that your season ended. Your basketball teams, plural, are excellent, but that's about it.
Best December football played by the Vols, and that's my only statement on last night.
Okay, very good. On behalf of the entire crazed Vols fan base, that's the best December football.
Oh, no, I don't speak for them. They scare me.
Well, you are them. I hate to inform you of that, but you are the closest thing to a representative that we have.
Yeah. Oh, really? Because you're the only one here wearing a power tee, as far as I can tell.
Oh, please.
Buck's got a burner. You know he does, and it's just Vol hot takes left and right.
You think it's Vol hot takes? You don't think it's just me out here, I almost said a bad word, but bleep posting people? You think it's just specifically Vols? I would like to dip a toe in there one time, just kind of Kevin Durant my way through a crazed fan base, be it Tennessee, Ohio State, or something like that. I need a little extra toxicity in my life.
I think it's 50% Vols takes, 25% fire whoever Indiana's basketball coach is.
No, I do that for my normal
cat
account.
Pictures.
Cat pictures. Probably so. Either way, it was a fun football game. Detroit obviously pulls away and has their 14th win on the season, 40-34. Is the final on Monday Night Football. Is a meaningless game. Niners aren't going to the postseason. They're just kind of chilling at this point in time, though. They played to win the game. You have Dan Campbell out there playing all of his starters the whole way through. They play to win the game. You know how many times Detroit has scored 40 or more points this season?
Many.
Five. I got excited just because the Titans got to 30 for the first time in 1,000 or whatever days. Detroit's out here. Damn a defense. I don't care how many times you're gonna pick us apart, Kyle Shanahan. We're just gonna keep outscoring you. Keep going for it on fourth down. And because they have such an overwhelming offensive unit, they can do that. It's the thing that probably makes me feel the best about them moving forward into the postseason, even though they have been really decimated on the defensive side of the football by injuries, and they were just having a tough time stopping anything Niners related. They did get a couple of turnovers. Brock Purdy throws 2 picks and does have a late elbow injury, I believe is what happened to
it seems to be a nerve issue, and I think we'd be surprised if he plays next week. Obviously, they've been eliminated for weeks at this point. But, yeah, the Lions are just going to have to resort to outscoring everybody.
Which is fine, because they can.
Sure, yeah. And Kirby Joseph, did his damnedest to keep that defense afloat. Seems to be the only starter still playing, him and Jack Campbell on the Lions defense. Kirby Joseph quietly leads the league in interceptions with 9. But, yeah, I think Detroit's just going to have to doesn't it feel, even though they keep winning, and they finished the season undefeated on the road, by the way.
Crazy.
But does it feel somewhat unsustainable right now what the Lions are doing?
No, because their offense is sustainable, and their offense can overwhelm you at any given point. It doesn't matter.
I mean, just how many teams with a defense that has suffered that much, and again, most of it is because of injuries, how many teams just outscore their way to a Super Bowl like that?
That's a fair point by you, but I don't know. I mean, wouldn't that be the case for Baltimore, for example? Even though their defense has kind of righted the ship,
their defense has definitely righted the ship.
In the last month, people smarter than me who talk about the deployment of players within the scheme have noted how much of a difference Kyle Hamilton's situation has made for the Ravens defense, how much better they're playing as a result, how excellent he is, and how that's, among other things, credit to Zach Orr, their defensive coordinator, a first-time defensive coordinator, dealing with a bit of brain drain for as many coaches like Mike McDonald, who goes to the Seahawks to become a head coach. Obviously, Denard Wilson comes here. They had a couple of people leave on a really good defensive coaching staff from last season. But they have certainly, the argument for Baltimore prior to their defense getting right was well, they could just outscore people. It doesn't matter that they were at times the most penalized team in football. Titans are down there with them at this point in time without having the level of red zone efficiency that Baltimore has. But I don't know. Wouldn't you make the case if you were to unseat the Chiefs this year? And yes, the Chiefs do still have an excellent defense, and we'll see what Chris Jones's availability is. He obviously did not play in that Christmas game, and it didn't seem to matter because ironically enough, Kansas City's offense got them right in that game against the Steelers, and it would be just the most predictable thing in the world for their offense to get into high gear at the most important time of the season as the regular season comes to a close. But you can make the case that there's a great many teams who are capable of just outright outscoring you en route to getting through the postseason this year. There's a lot of high-powered offenses at the top of the food chain.
There are, but the ones that are playing their best football, Kansas City and Baltimore, also have a defense that is playing their best football. Baltimore's playing their best defensive football that they have all year. They just shut out the Houston Texans. Only points came from a safety where Derrick Henry bounced it outside instead of just continuing going up the middle.
Lamar personally apologizing to the Ravens defense for allowing there to be a safety in that game.
Right. It should have been a shutout. That game should have been 31-0 in Houston on Christmas Day. So, yeah, I don't know. It feels more and more unsustainable to me what the Lions are doing, although it's impressive. They just keep on winning. But you talk about high stakes on Sunday Night Football this coming weekend.
Oh, it's so good. Yeah, what a great way to end the regular season.
How often do we get that? It's not a winning in and losing out situation, but it's win and one seed, bye week, home field advantage all the way through, lose, and you're hitting the road every single week in the postseason. As the 5 seed, I guess you'd be that first wild card team. So that does not happen very often.
No, I just can't imagine there's ever, and maybe there is. I haven't looked this up specifically, but how often are you seeing 2 14-win teams at the end of the season in a Sunday night football game for the division that way?
Yeah.
It's crazy what the NFC North has been. And, maybe I'm a little shaken in my Packers Super Bowl pick. God knows the Jets aren't getting there this year. Oof. Vibes are awful in New York. Did you read Ty Dunn's latest piece on the Jets? People are now just picking at the carcass of the New York Jets, be it Diana Rossini and her colleagues at The Athletic with the Woody Johnson. Do I call it an expose? Kind of felt like that. I don't know if you, was that while you were out on vacation?
The Woody Johnson thing?
Yeah.
No.
Okay. Well, either way, just a very, very disturbing look into the goings-on of one of the most publicly dysfunctional franchises where you have players actively in the locker room. Ty Dunn, anyway, went around talking to some players who, are up in the air with the Jets, and how Aaron Rodgers is the greatest con man in all of football is something that Ty Dunn was comfortable putting in print. And he's approaching players who are, pending free agents and things like that, who are saying, nah, I'm not interested in coming. Like, openly saying to media with reporters and recorders, saying, yeah, I'm ready for free agency. I'm ready for a fresh start. Get me out of here. Garrett Wilson talking about the Jets have a losing gene. These kind of things. I mean, just a complete and total nonsensical situation going on there. But yeah, at the top of the food chain, the Lions exist. And between them and the Vikings at the end of the season, Week 18 is going to have some games that are of interest. Most teams have solidified their postseason position. Some teams will play their starters, like the Lions. Obviously, D'Amico Ryan saying that the Texans would play their starters in Week 18 against the Tennessee Titans, which, by the way, is huge for those of you who are actively rooting for this team to bottom out so you can have the clearest possible path to the number 1 overall pick, whether you choose to select a player there or trade out and load up as they try to get this thing here locally off the mat. But I mean, so let's kind of peel back the layers on something you said about Detroit. You feeling Detroit doesn't have sustainability or may not have sustainability with the way that they're just shelling teams. Did you feel that Kansas City was sustainable throughout the course of this season, despite them never having eclipsed the 30-point mark this season and winning with defense, and then all of a sudden they turn it on against the Pittsburgh Steelers on Christmas Day?
I would take Kansas City's situation every single time because they have Patrick Mahomes, and they're going to win in those critical situations. It's just what they do. It's how many straight wins in one-score games? 16, an NFL record. So, no, give me Kansas City's situation time in and time out, especially when we've seen the sample size of their offense middling at best throughout the course of a regular season, the defense being in the upper echelon of the NFL, and then what happens in the playoffs. Not to mention, they are getting healthy at the right time. They seem to be peaking at the right time.
Well, the Chris Jones thing is something to keep an eye on. That's a really critically important part of their defense.
I just mean offensively. Hollywood Brown coming back, that allows them to do more with Xavier Worthy, to do probably more of what they intended with Xavier Worthy when they drafted him in the first round. Yeah, to give me Kansas City situation 100 times over what is going on in Detroit right now on the defensive side of the ball. Absolutely.
Oh, man, I don't know. It's going to be a fascinating matchup, whoever gets to the Super Bowl this year, and obviously we'll have a postseason, an exciting postseason to work our way through. In the meantime, for the Titans side of things, of course, that will be more centered around the draft and the pursuit of the number 1 overall pick or securing the 2nd overall pick, just trying to avoid being one of these 4-13 teams potentially that ends up somewhere in the 5 to 9 range based on what the rest of the NFL looks like at this point in time. And we'll have time to discuss that more at length. But since we haven't talked about Tennessee football for a while, there has been a lot of stuff going on in the portal, specifically some controversy around wide receiver Mike Matthews. So Pete Nakos will give us the latest information from On3 Sports coming up next. Welcome back to the show. We are fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken. Pete Nakos on 3 Sports will join us momentarily. He's busy breaking news like Miami firing their defensive coordinator, Lance Guidry. He's officially out. That was a big problem issue for the Canes all year long. It's why Cam Ward had as many spectacular performances as he did, because he was having to bail himself out, bail his team out on a regular basis throughout the course of this season. So as we wait for Pete Nakos, we can take your phone call. 615-737-1045 is the number. Let's go to Trevor up next.
Hey, Buck. Happy New Year. How are you?
Well, we've got one more day, but Happy New Year in advance to you because we won't be here tomorrow.
Right on. So I was calling because you guys were covering the press conference yesterday with Coach Callahan at the end of the show, and I don't know who it was. It was somebody right after PK that asked the question if Coach Callahan knew when it wasn't competitive anymore. And you could tell they kind of lost their teeth at the end of their question. They started to take a jab at him, like, was there a point in the game or the season where you knew it wasn't competitive anymore? And I was going to see what you guys thought about that.
Yeah, it was Nick Suss. I don't think he necessarily lost his teeth. Suss doesn't go in necessarily teeth bared the way that some people might in a press conference. Thanks for the call, Trevor. Yeah, that he did acknowledge that. We didn't really talk about that much, but that is an interesting point. That he was asked yesterday. Did you happen to catch that in the press conference?
At what point they stopped being competitive to get to the playoffs?
Essentially, I mean, the way that I understood it and the way that the transcript reads it, are you looking at the transcript now? The way that it reads in the transcript is basically like as a team, not in terms of making the playoffs. And I thought it was interesting for Callahan to touch on that. We can circle back around to that because Pete Nakos of On 3 Sports joins us now, and there's a great deal of portal news, great deal of college football news going on right now as bowl season rolls on and we get ready for the college football playoff quarterfinals. Pete, thank you so much for joining us. With everything that's going on right now, there's obviously a great deal of local interest in what's been happening with wide receiver Mike Matthews. I know that you have done some reporting on this at on3.com, which is, of course, well worth your subscription. Great intel there on a variety of different things, specifically the transfer portal recently. What can you tell us on the latest on this Tennessee wide receiver?
Yeah, so thanks for having me on, guys. So Mike Matthews, right, the 5-star freshman, he is not yet officially in the transfer portal, right? News broke Saturday night, Sunday morning, however you want to look at it, that he was going to enter. He has yet to officially enter. He remains in negotiations with Tennessee about a possible return for 2025. It remains unclear at this time what direction this is trending. The Tennessee Compliance Department has definitely made sure to wait as long as possible to put his name in, and he's not officially in yet. But Tennessee continues to try to work the phones to get him to return for the next season.
And so, what I guess from your perspective, based on the intel that you've been able to gather, why was there interest in even exploring this as an option for Matthews?
Yeah, I think we all saw the Nico rumors flying around Saturday night. I think there's a little concern there. I'm not saying that those rumors were true. I'm just saying I think that those started to spread on social media and that maybe gave some Mike Matthews some pause. But then beyond that too, I mean, I think I don't know if you necessarily went in and made this decision, knowing if you wanted to leave Tennessee for good. I think it may have been a little bit of a knee-jerk reaction. That's what Tennessee's trying to tell him is that, hey, come back. Nico's back. We're going to try to keep building this wide receiver room around you and a few other pieces. And that's kind of the pitch that Tennessee's making right now from everything I've been told.
Pete Nakos of On 3 Sports here with us on 104.5 The Zone. You can follow him on Twitter for the latest in portal news, the latest in college football news at Pete Nakos _.
So, Pete, could you give us kind of a summation of the timeline in terms of the deadlines? I know the transfer portal technically is closed. Players can no longer submit their papers, but where are we at as far as when we could get another update on Mike Matthews, just given the timeline of how things are structured at this point?
Yeah, so Saturday at midnight was the deadline to request and file paperwork. So everything I've been told is that Mike has filed his paperwork, and now it's just a matter of time until Tennessee Compliance puts his name in the transfer portal. But during that time period, right, Tennessee's doing everything they can to get him to stay. And in terms of when I think he'll exactly go in, I think that this timeline is going to become harder to understand because he filed the paperwork on the weekend after the Christmas holiday. And then you would think the 48 hours would expire today, but he's not going to go in tomorrow either because it's the New Year's Day holiday. So theoretically, he could go in as late as Thursday, the way this is tracking.
So obviously wide receiver is a big need for Tennessee at this point. If Matthews does go through with this, he would be the sixth receiver to go into the portal out of Tennessee's wide receiver room. You reported that the Vols have entered the race for the USC transfer, Zachariah Branch, who is in the portal. What's the latest you've heard on that in terms of other teams that are interested in what the best fit could be for Branch moving forward and where the Vols would stack up?
Yeah, so he's, as we all know, right, he's already visited Georgia and Arizona State. That was before the dead period, before Christmas. And now he's looking at Tennessee. Texas has already also been mentioned as a possible other visit spot. Talking to a couple sources this morning, there's nothing solid yet with him visiting Knoxville, but they're still trying to do everything they can to get him on a visit. And by no means, and what I'm saying is saying that he's not going to go on a visit. There just isn't a solid date yet.
So with everything that's been going on across the sport, there's a great deal of interest here locally in Shadeur Sanders, obviously getting ready to leave Colorado and enter the NFL draft. That also leads to some level of intrigue around his father, Dion, and what his future might be with the Buffaloes. What sense are you getting, given that they've just secured Caden Salter through the portal, who was also formerly at Tennessee for a period of time before going on to Liberty? What's kind of the sense around Dion's future, and what indications are you getting on that from players or people who are involved with the portal process for players who are considering a future with the Buffaloes?
If I've learned one thing, it's not to try to predict what Deion Sanders is going to do. So that's that for starters. I mean, I don't think Caden Salter goes there if he doesn't think Deion's going to be around next year. Now, obviously, things can change so fast in this day and age in sports, so I don't want to rule anything out, but I would imagine that Salter landing at Colorado came with some sort of assurance or something that Deion would be there next year. But yeah, I mean, the other thing too, guys, is, I mean, the rumors are just going to continue to run rampant until they're actually drafted and we see where they go and things like that. Looks like the Giants will not get him, though.
Titans fans rejoice.
I'm fascinated at not, just the Dion impact in the transfer portal in terms of players going to Colorado, but the Travis Hunter impact now in the portal, because obviously, to circle it back to Tennessee, Boo Carter, the Tennessee defensive back, announced he will return to Tennessee, reportedly with a stipulation that he's going to get a look on offense. And an exciting punt returner, that's a conversation that's been had around Boo Carter before. But it makes me wonder just how much more of that we're going to see. Guys that believe they can sort of bring a Travis Hunter-like impact after seeing that it is possible. Do you get any sense that might become more commonplace for players that want to play both ways and can use that as a leverage point in terms of staying or going?
I mean, it's definitely on the rise, right? Even take away Boo Carter, right? Jalen Mbakwe, the talented defense back for Alabama, has gone through a similar process to Boo Carter, where he goes in the portal, pulls out, and then it comes out that he wants to play on the offense side of the ball too. And it might look like in 2025 that he's going to spend most of his time on the offense side of the ball. So I'm not ready to call it a trend yet, but there's definitely some sort of a Travis Hunter impact going on.
So Tennessee fans, there is some concern right now at the wide receiver position, and you just kind of laid out the latest that you have on Mike Matthews, but there's no question that there needs to be more in that wide receiver room. It's going to be a big point of emphasis for them this offseason. And Vols fans are talking about NIL, how there needs to be more done. It was a place where Tennessee was thought to be kind of ahead of the curve. Now are the Vols falling behind? That's the discussion happening with the fan base. To you, what is the perception of Tennessee football in terms of their transfer portal approach and where they sit right now in this NIL landscape?
I mean, listen, Tennessee's always been the leader in NIL, so I think the last thing I'm going to do is come out and say that like they're struggling. I mean, if we go back 2 years, I mean, they were the pacemakers for this all. Now, do I think a lot of other schools across college football have gotten a lot more dollars together and it's become a lot more competitive? Yes. Do I think that revenue sharing is going to make it a little bit more of an even playing field? Yeah. But I also think, though, that Tennessee has deep donor pockets in a similar sense to what we're seeing at Texas and Ohio State and Oregon. And I think the Vols will always be in that leading group when it comes to dollars being able to spend. Now, I think the one thing that we're going to have to keep watching is you look at Ohio State, they only spent $20 million on their roster. Everyone says that's a lot of money. In the big scheme of things, they actually did a fairly good job of watching how much they spent. And they loaded dollars on their top players. I think Tennessee probably needs to do that a little bit more. I think they've done a very good job of making sure everybody on the roster gets some dollars, and maybe that changes in the future.
At Pete Nakos _ is where you can follow him. On3.com is where you can read his insights and intel on the world of college sports business and the transfer portal. He's been breaking all manner of news throughout the course of this process. I'm sure every story, every storyline has its own unique set of circumstances that you're required to adapt and adjust to, Pete. But from your standpoint in this cycle, what's been the most interesting story to document, to follow along, to dig up more intel on?
You know, this one happened so quickly that I wouldn't say it was like fun to dig up intel on, because didn't last as long as I would have liked to try to cover it. But the John Mateer situation at Oklahoma is fascinating from the lens of we all waited for 3 weeks, if it felt like, to see if he was going to go in the portal and then follow his offensive coordinator, Ben Arbuckle, to Oklahoma. But behind the scenes, I mean, Miami offered a hefty NIL package to give him a lot to think about that. And then, I mean, beyond that too, I think it's kind of leaked a little bit, but I know behind the scenes for a fact that North Carolina was a legit factor. And the minute Bill Belichick got on the phone with John Mateer, a lot of things changed in that recruitment, and Oklahoma really had to step up. So that's like a behind the scenes one that's been interesting to cover. You know, the Zachariah Branch thing has been really interesting. It has not been the easiest to get info on what is going on in that recruitment. And I think that a lot of people thought after they took those Georgia and Arizona State visits that this recruitment was going to shut down. And now, a day before the dead period ends, it looks like they're going to take at least 1 to 2 more visits, if I had to bet. So that's going to be one that I think is going to have some more twists and turns in the days to come.
You bring up Belichick and his level of impact. How consequential has that been for North Carolina so far? Obviously, understanding that it's very, very early on in this marriage between the two.
Yeah, you know, as someone who is from the Northeast, right? Like, I'm 27, I'm 28. Like, Bill was like an idol of mine, like as a kid. So it is extremely odd to cover college football and be like, oh, yeah, Bill Belichick's the head coach of North Carolina. Like,
you mentioned him so casually. It's like he's been doing it for years.
Yeah. Well, to me, it feels like it. But, you know, in terms of his impacts and everything, I think that it will be an interesting case study to see how it all kind of unfolds. Like, what Dion has been able to do at Colorado has been amazing, and all kudos to him. I think that what Dion can do is be charismatic and sell guys on the recruiting pitch. And he obviously does a good job of that when he gets guys to Boulder. It's been well documented how he doesn't want to go on the road, obviously. For Bill, it's all about selling that NFL pitch. I'll just be interested to see if guys buy into that, and if like he starts making an impact on the trail, or if he attempts to run it like almost like an NFL model where he just dips into free agency, aka the transfer portal. So I don't know. We'll see. I'll be really interested to see too how year one goes. I mean, they lost a lot of guys. It was a late time for a turnover. The portal's starting to wind down. He's going to have to go all in on the spring to get some players if they're going to be competitive in 2025.
Pete, thank you so much for the information. We look forward to continuing to keep track of things via on3.com, and look forward to catching up with you again at some point soon.
You bet. See you guys.
That's Pete Nakos of On3 Sports giving us the latest intel. So do you feel better or worse about the Mike Matthews situation, given that there doesn't seem to be a ton of clarity there?
Yeah, I mean, the update is kind of that there is no update. I think Tennessee fans feel a little bit better than they did when they first saw that tweet or push notification flash across their screen that Mike Matthews plans on entering the portal. For what it's worth, he's re-uploaded all of the Instagram pictures of him wearing Tennessee orange and white back to his page.
So somebody told me this the other day. It's not that they're deleting them. You can archive posts. I had no idea.
You can hide them off of your account.
I'm now showing my age as people, advance through social media at a rate that I'm not accustomed to. I had no idea that this was a thing.
So he's in renegotiations or negotiations, I suppose, however you want to frame it. Tennessee's got to get him back. If he were to hit the portal and go, he wasn't overly productive last year. In fact, Tennessee fans would have loved to see more Mike Matthews snaps. He had 7 catches, 90 yards, 2 touchdowns. But Tennessee, no matter what happens with Mike Matthews, will lose approximately 72% of its receiving production from last year. Dante Thornton to the draft, Brew McCoy to the draft, Squirrel White, one of those guys that hits the portal. They did get some good news yesterday with Miles Kitselman returning to Tennessee, the tight end, the transfer from Alabama, who, by the way, is leaning into the ruling that helped Diego Pavia come back to Vanderbilt. So Kitselman gets another year of eligibility. But there's no question to me that is the position group that has had the most drop-off since that 2022 run. The wide receiver spot. Since that Cedric Tillman, Jalen Hyatt, Ramel Keaton sort of year, Tennessee's got to figure out a way to get back to that success they were having at the position. Chris Brazzell was a big transfer portal acquisition last year, and no question he came up huge in the Alabama game, popped up in some spots, and he should be back next year, but did not have the impact that he was thought to have. So this could look markedly different if you're talking about a wide receiver room that includes Chris Brazzell, Mike Matthews if he returns, Zechariah Branch, the USC transfer if they can get him in, Braylon Staley, the talented freshman. But I don't know if it's more of Josh Heupel's offense and the way defenses are playing it differently, kind of allowing Tennessee to do more in the run game and not committing to loading the box more. Or I don't know if it's more about individual talent, maybe a little bit of both, because Tennessee had opportunities. They had guys running wide open at times this past season, and Nico wasn't able to take advantage. But I just know it has not looked quite like it did in 2022, especially at that position. And that is a huge point of emphasis for this team this offseason.
Were you somebody, the two of you, given that I'm the only one wearing a power tee today, were the two of you swept up in the Nico Iamaleava rumor mill that he just lightly touched on? Because for those who are not familiar with that situation, and there's nothing that's been made of it since then, but Squirrel White goes into the transfer portal. Nico kind of has a bit of is cryptic too strong a term to describe the post?
No, it's fair. It
on
was
social media.
It was a picture of him in the middle of a drop back, and it's just him in the frame, I think during the Georgia game, and he has like the thinking emoji at the top of the picture on his Instagram story. So, some people saw that and said, oh, is he thinking about leaving? Other people said, he's just wondering who am I going to throw the ball to next year? And then you got Nico's dad, arguing with Vols fans on Twitter saying, we're not going anywhere.
Oh, parents, man, you got to stay off Twitter. I know it's tough. You got to stay off Twitter. Well, it's not worth it.
If anything, that reassured Tennessee fans.
Oh, just to clear it up.
I said, no, we haven't, because there were rumors that Nico was starting to, take visits to other places, that Miami is calling. And then Mr. Iamaleava, came to social media to say, no, this is all fabricated.
I don't know. If I was somebody interested in keeping a player's services on my football team, the last place I would want their parents is Vol Twitter. I wouldn't want them anywhere near that acid bath that exists on social media.
They got to get Mac Matthews back, because when you look at what'd I say?
Mac
Matthews. When you look at guys that have had success in this offense at that position, you look at a lot of guys that made year 2 jumps, specifically Jalen Hyatt, who was a non-factor in 2021. And then in 2022, he's the Bolitnikoff winner and gets drafted by the Giants. So it's exciting to think about the year 2 jump he could make as a 5-star talent with Nico as his quarterback, but he's got to be in the building to do that. So definitely going to be a pivotal next few days for Tennessee at that position. Tennessee has got to find a way to elevate the talent level there, because, again, the gap was clear in that Ohio State game, a team with 3 NFL wide receivers. Tennessee's had receiver issues all year long. Nico hadn't been perfect. He's missed some open guys. He's also had plenty of drops in their two biggest games of the year, the losses at Georgia and Ohio State.
Do you give any credence, and keep it short because we're running out of time here, but is there any reason to think that Nico may have something to do, his level of performance or lack thereof relative to expectation from whomever it might be, from players, from fans, that he has anything to do with the level of attrition that's going on at the wide receiver spot?
I wouldn't think so. Most of the five guys
give that any credence at all?
Not really. The five guys that are in the portal weren't really playing. Caleb Webb and Chaz Nimrod were getting some playing time, but Nate Spillman, Nathan Leacock, those guys just weren't seeing the field. Squirrel White was, but he was banged up. He was playing inconsistently. There's not any worry for me about Nico Iamaleava.
Okay.
So not necessarily, but there's no question that wide receiver position is something that Tennessee fans will be keeping an eye on all offseason.
Do I have something to give away?
Yes, 2 tickets to Nelly's concert at Bridgestone Arena next year, as well as a $100 gift card to a Moment's Peace Salon and Day Spa.
Excellent. So all you have to do to win those Nelly tickets and a $100 gift card to the best day spa out there, a Moment's Peace Salon and Day Spa, is call in 615-737-1045 and tell us the thing in sports that made you say, oh no. Made possible by A Moment's Peace Salon and Day Spa. If you did not do right by somebody for your holiday shopping, it's not too late. A Moment's Peace Salon and Day Spa is a great way to start the new year, new you at A Moment's Peace Salon and Day Spa. Visit them online at amomentspeace.com, or you could just win a $100 gift card from us if you tell us what in sports made you say, oh no, as well as what, Jackson?
2 tickets to see Nelly's concert at Bridgestone Arena next year.
615-737-1045. What in sports made you say, oh no? Mine is Azeez Al-Shaair. He's returning from his suspension this week. Obviously, his hit on Trevor Lawrence that ended Trevor Lawrence's season is the reason that he has missed the last 3 games. He put a statement out, a 4-page statement on Twitter out yesterday, documenting his level of discussion with Cal and Hannah McNair, with Nick Caserio, the general manager, with D'Amico Ryans, with the league, and everything that he says or everything that he feels, giving praise to a higher power about how it is that he is trying to understand his punishment and all these different things. Learned so much from this entire experience, seeing myself on video, letting my emotions get the best of me to the point where I completely lost it. All those different kind of things. I wouldn't want to play him this weekend. Both Titans quarterbacks are going to play this weekend. I would not want to see Azeez Al-Shaair across from me, given what he's already done on the season this year. That made me say, oh no.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That would be a terrible way to end a terrible season if you got a significant injury from a linebacker who's just out there for blood.
I'm going to keep it in the AFC South. There's oh-no's to go around in this division.
One for each franchise.
Yeah. So you got the Houston Texans. I will go with the Indianapolis Colts. We mentioned briefly what Pat McAfee did on social media with his former team, obviously a franchise he has a deep connection with. Not going to sit here and read Pat's whole tweet because it is basically a novel.
I don't think I've ever seen a tweet that long. I think Pat wrote more on Twitter yesterday or on Sunday than I did in my post-game recap for A2Sports.com.
But here are some of the highlights. Pat McAfee, after the Colts' embarrassing 45-33 loss to the Giants that got them officially eliminated from the postseason, Pat took to Twitter to say, I've said what I believe to be the truth about the team, and a bunch of Colts fans, in quotations, on the internet were trying to get me booed out of the city. He said, current players who have won nothing during their entire tenures started using me and my face to try and paint me as the enemy in the city I've committed my life to, and in the end, everything went just like I bleeping said it would. In the biggest moments, everybody with the brain knew they would crack, and they did. I just want to read this paragraph. A blind person could see the red flags on this team. Work ethic questions never happens on good teams. Preparation commitment questions never happens on good teams. Late to meetings, late to skipping treatment. The franchise quarterback tapping out of a game on 3rd down in the red zone because he was tired never happened in the history of the NFL, he says. He goes on and on to say your unwarranted arrogance, laziness, and lack of professionalism has led you to another early vacation, which is probably what most of you entitled bums have been hoping for, addressing the players on the Indianapolis Colts. And he is not alone. I mean, the criticism from former Colts players, former Colts head coach Chuck Pagano, talking about the decision to not play Anthony Richardson, reports that he's dealing with soreness and all the confusion and conflicting reports coming out of that building about what he's actually dealing with that led to Joe Flacco playing at MetLife Stadium Sunday. Drew Lock, in his 3 meaningful appearances this season, had thrown 1 touchdown and 4 interceptions. On Sunday, he threw 4 touchdowns and ran for another one.
It's crazy.
He was 17 of 23 for 309 yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 rushing, 4 passing, and no turnovers. He was phenomenal. And the Colts looked lifeless in a win-or-go-home game. So the situation's bad right now in Indianapolis, and it's hard to pinpoint. I mean, they have had such a weird season, and the Colts are what made me say, oh no, in sports this weekend.
I don't know if you saw this, but it was pointed out on social media, and forgive me for not giving proper credit. I can't remember off the top of my head where I saw it, but that Chris Ballard, who's been the general manager there for an extended period of time, do you know how many times the Colts have won the division with Chris Ballard as the general manager?
Is it 0?
It's 0. Do you know how many times each of the other 3 teams have won the division since Chris Ballard has been the general manager?
At least once or twice.
Twice.
Yeah.
The Jags, the Texans, the Titans have all won the division at least Twice since he's been the general manager. That's crazy. You want to talk about people? I know people are talking about firing people here in Tennessee and the Jags firing people, the Giants firing people. Man, the Colts are in such a nebulous, it's not even, hell is obviously a terrible place to exist, but purgatory seems a bit worse. If you're a team with the level of expectation, the level of dialogue around them every damn offseason, I don't know why anybody gives the Colts as a franchise any benefit of the doubt. They haven't won anything since they've had two, I hate to use the G word, but generational talents at quarterback with Peyton Manning followed up by Andrew Luck. They are choking dogs.
How does he survive this?
How has he survived this long?
At every turn,
tell me,
he's benefited so much from the Andrew Luck retirement and the spot, and it put him in a bad spot.
Not like Irsay's scared of blackmail. Whatever Chris Ballard might have on him is probably out on Irsay's Twitter already.
Well, I say he's benefited from it. It's been an excuse for him for years. Swing and a miss. Phillip Rivers was as good as it got for them, but swing and a miss on Carson Wentz, swing and a miss on Matt Ryan. Okay, let's draft a young quarterback. And then Anthony Richardson experience has been disastrous. So do they let Chris Ballard, take this franchise forward?
They shouldn't. I mean, just flatly. They shouldn't have let it get this far. I mean, the Colts, man. What a joke. 615-737-1045 is the number. What in sports may do you say? Oh, no. Let's start with Philip.
Hey, guys. How you doing?
Good.
Mine is the oh no moment from when Tom Brady and the Oakland Raiders were playing, and he went back to throw that pass and was not called a fumble, so his arm wasn't going forward.
Are you talking about, like, Tom Brady as an active player?
Yes.
You talking about the Tuck Rule game from 2001?
Yes.
That's got to be as far back as we've ever gone for an oh-no submission.
Are we taking, like, submissions of...
Not what made you say oh no in sports this week. What made you say oh no in sports in life? In your lifetime?
That's barely my lifetime.
I don't even know what to do with that. You said that's barely your lifetime? God, that made me feel old. Okay, obviously that's not a valid submission because that's not this week. That's
over 2 decades ago.
But we appreciate the laugh, Philip. Thank you. McCoy is next.
Hey, Buck. How's it going?
It's going.
He's going to go with Peyton Manning losing the Heisman to Charles Woodson.
What do you got for us?
my oh no is during the Titans game on Sunday on Twitter, the Mettenberger tweeted, the Titans would let Jimmy Carter scramble for a first down. And about an hour later, it was announced that Jimmy Carter had passed away.
Oh, no.
No. I shouldn't laugh.
Now, I assume he's not talking about the real Zach Mettenberger, but this fake Titans Twitter account.
There's an account that's out there. That's just
hilarious.
Called The Mettenberger. I've seen it a couple of times. Well, no, it's not hilarious that Jimmy Carter then died. He may have already been gone for all we know, but yeah, that's a tough one.
Rest in peace.
That's okay. Leader in the clubhouse, not Tom Brady in the Tuck Rule in 2001. Reggie is next.
Hey, what's happening? Can you guys hear me?
We sure can.
Yeah. My old no was when I read the article about Rand being fired and Cali being kept, and I guess it even ties in with your talk about with your discussion about Indianapolis. Indianapolis has had good players. They've had good teams. The teams that they have had as far as personnel is concerned have underperformed. They've had some talented teams. They've underperformed, which that really aims back at coaching more than it does with the individuals that are over personnel. The same thing holds true with the Titans. The Titans had a good roster. At least it appeared to be a good roster going into the season. Now, they had some injuries, but certainly the quarterback play was their big red flag, and they got rid of a third quarterback that they could have easily kept on a rookie contract and used because of his versatility. But Cali, who is a quarterback guy, decides to cut him. I'm glad. I think Rand helped himself by not cutting the guy and trade him. That's not magic. That's just saying this guy is too good to cut. We've got to get something for him. So I hope Rand realizes that the coach is making this into a personnel issue as well, because I saw an article where he said that's what he needed to win was players. I think he needs to utilize his players better. That's just it. That's just my opinion, guys.
Thanks for the call, Reggie. We appreciate it. So he's referencing Gentry Estes' column yesterday, calling for the firing of General Manager Rand Carthon and Director of Football Operations, or President of Football Operations, Chad Brinker, who also was involved in the personnel process. He mentioned the quarterback, though, and Carthon is tied to that. Carthon and Brinker are tied to that quarterback. So I get your point, though. It does seem nonsensical to fire one and keep the other. Or want one fired and not be interested in firing the other, as opposed to keeping them both or firing them both. It just, I don't know. I don't know what their solution is going to be at year's end, but it's going to be an interesting one. Cooper, real quick, what you got?
So my name is Cooper. I called in last week for this Owner Sports Moment, and so they said, is this the end of the year one or for just this week? Before I say my Owner Moment.
It's whatever you want it to be, Cooper. What do you got?
Okay, so 2024 World Series, it's the Game 5, top of the fifth, bases loaded, 2 outs, balls hit straight to Aaron Judge, and he drops it. And he drops it, eventually leading to another error, and the Dodgers come back 5-0 to win the World Series.
That's a really good one.
All right, but what made him say, "Oh no" in sports this year? It's New Year's Eve. Let's give it to Cooper. Happy New Year.
Lucas not interested in sifting through all the other ones, just wants to give it to Cooper. I'm with that. It's a good one. It's a good one by Cooper, and he did call last week thinking that it was the thing in sports that made you say, oh no, on the year, though it is the last oh no of the calendar year. So congratulations to Cooper, though McCoy's submission was probably my favorite because
a little too old. We're going back too far.
A little dark humor there. Dark humor on the Jimmy Carter. The Titans would let Jimmy Carter scramble for a first down, hours before it was announced that Jimmy Carter did pass. That was probably my favorite one of the year. R.I.P. Jimmy Carter, by the way. Coming up next, the CFP preview. We've got some games to talk about. We'll do that. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone.
11:03, good morning from the 104.5 The Zone studios. I'm Lucas Panzica. Week 17 wrapped up Monday night. The Lions are undefeated on the road in 2024 after a 40-34 win over the 49ers. Brock Purdy left the game with an elbow injury, and Joshua Dobbs finished it out as the Niners fall to 6-10. Detroit will host Minnesota this weekend for the NFC North title and the 1 seed. The Titans will wrap up the regular season against the Texans Sunday, and Brian Callahan met with the media yesterday saying that both Mason Rudolph and Will Levis will likely see playing time.
I'm actually going to probably play both of them, to be honest. Let those guys both have a chance to play. Mason did some good things in the game, but I do think that let Will get another shot at throwing the ball around a little bit and playing some football. He's earned a right to go play a little more football just because of the way he's handled the whole process. I got a lot of respect for it.
The Nashville Predators were blanked at the Winnipeg Jets Monday 3-0. They will stay on the road visiting the Wild tonight at 7 p.m. And the college football playoff resumes tonight in the quarterfinals. Penn State and Boise State in the Fiesta Bowl at 6:30. The ReliaQuest Bowl kicking off now in Tampa between Alabama and Michigan. For all your foundation repairs and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Feels like an eternity since we've watched some college football playoff games, and given how non-competitive the first round was, I think we're all looking forward, or at least hopeful, to the quarterfinals, having a little more juice. You've got those on tap this week. Boise State, Penn State, Arizona State, Texas, Oregon, Ohio State, Georgia, and Notre Dame is what the bracket remaining looks like, and it is going to be fascinating to see how they all attempt to move forward. Now, you put it to a poll on Twitter, at Buck Rising. By the way, welcome back, 615-737-1045, fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken, me, Jackson, and Lucas, until 1. What was the phrasing of the poll on Twitter, and what are the results coming back so far regarding the college football playoff quarterfinals?
It was which team should be on higher upset alert in the college football playoff quarterfinals, and 57% are going Penn State, Boise State over Texas, Arizona State, because those are the two games with massive underdogs. Obviously, Boise, a big underdog tonight against Penn State, and I will look up the spread of that game. Penn State, 11.5-point favorites, and the Verbo Fiesta Bowl.
Okay, so before we talk about these games specifically, playoff blowouts happen all the time.
All the time.
And not just specific to college football. I mean, hell, for many, many years, the Super Bowl was one of the least competitive games of the NFL calendar that people would complain about, how lacking in competitiveness the NFL's championship game would oftentimes be. So these things happen. There was a ton of hand-wringing about the first-round blowouts. There was a ton of discussion specifically, and not that Kirk Herbstreit was the only one responsible for having this dialogue, but he was one of the most high-profile people having the dialogue about what the committee should do and whether Indiana or Tennessee or SMU should have had any business being in there in the first place, and how much should be accounted for beyond just what a team's record was, even though that seems to be one of the most critical components to advancing and making a college football playoff or securing a college football playoff berth, all these different things that caused a bit of fuss after the first round went the way that it did. Now, it's my complete and total expectation that we would see at least one more blowout in the quarterfinal, regardless of who it is, because I don't know how this is going to go. I don't know if Georgia's going to come out guns blazing with a new quarterback and shock the world against a quality Notre Dame defense, whether Notre Dame's going to have the firepower to keep up, whether things will go chalk in the Boise State-Penn State game, the Arizona State-Texas game, and lead to the favorites covering or, at least having double-digit leads in those games, which I guess would technically be considered a blowout. I just think that those things are going to happen no matter how they structure the playoff. So all that fretting about it in the early portion of it, it's probably going to happen again in the quarterfinal, yeah?
Let me remind folks that 2 years ago, the national championship was 65-7. Like, yes.
How soon we forget.
Yeah, I mean, in every iteration of the college football playoff, there have been blowouts in the semifinal or sometimes in the national championship game. So, yeah, these four games probably aren't going to all be thrillers. I do have high hopes for the Ohio State-Oregon rematch. I do. That first game was one of the best games of the college football season. Ohio State played its best game against Tennessee in the first round. Can they carry that over to the Rose Bowl against an Oregon team that hasn't played in a couple weeks since the Big Ten championship over Penn State? And then Notre Dame, Georgia has a ton of question marks around it because of the quarterback situation. Gunnar Stockton has now had 3 weeks to get the first team reps, knowing that he's going to start in this game. And again, Georgia won back-to-back national titles with Stetson Bennett as their quarterback. I don't think Georgia needs to put all the pressure on the shoulders of Gunnar Stockton. They are a talented enough and a well-rounded enough team to win this game without Gunnar Stockton having to carry them. So I feel okay about Georgia being able to win that game against Notre Dame. My biggest question is, can Arizona State and or Boise stay in it? Even stay in it. And the Boise-Penn State matchup tonight is fascinating because of the Ashton Genty effect. Obviously, he's closing in on the Barry Sanders record, which would be incredible if he were able to surpass it. He has gone under 4.8 yards per carry in one game this year. It was when they beat UNLV in the regular season. Penn State is number 11 in the country in opponent yards per carry, allowing just 3.1. I think we can oversimplify the Penn State-Boise game. That if they can stop Ashton Genty, if they can hold him to that 3 yards per carry range, Penn State wins the game and probably wins it handily. But that's my biggest question. Can Boise and Arizona State's star players be stars enough to keep those games competitive? Mainly thinking of Ashton Genty with Boise and Cam Scatabo, the Arizona State running back.
Well, and an interesting note that I saw from ESPN is, let's just make it specific about the Boise State-Penn State game. A question of whether they'll be able to, Boise State's defense, limit any kind of explosive play element or an explosive play element from overtaking them, because Penn State is not an overwhelmingly explosive offense. This is courtesy of ESPN Stats and Info. Only 8.1% of Drew Aller, the Penn State quarterback's dropbacks, have gained 20-plus yards this season. That is 127th out of 130 QBR-eligible passers. But they do still rank as an offense ninth in yards per play because they are incredibly efficient. We have talked about Tyler Warren throughout the course of this season, the tight end, who is one of their best playmakers. How much Boise State is able to combat that, how much they're able to get a handle on Tyler Warren. If they do find ways to keep Tyler Warren contained, does somebody else beat them down the field? How much can they go blow for blow with a team that's got a much higher talent profile than them, other than the running back position in Boise State? That's honestly, Oregon, Ohio State is the most compelling game.
It could be a classic. We could be in for a classic.
It was a classic the first time around. That was one of the most exciting football games of the season. It was one of the few Big Ten teams to go out west in Ohio State and hang with a West Coast team that is now in the Big Ten, the way that so many of those games have been blowouts or non-competitive, or you've just seen the general wear and tear from the level of travel, a time difference, and all those different things play itself out with teams going west to east, east to west. The Oregon-Ohio State game should be, hopefully, knock on something, the best among these games. But I'm genuinely curious to see if Boise State can do it, because that offense is more balanced than I think people give it credit for. You see Ashton Genty's highlights running all over social media. Maybe you haven't watched a whole Boise State game. Maybe you haven't seen a ton of them outside of the star player on that team, but they are more competitive than just the running back position, even though the running back is clearly the star of the show.
Yeah, I'm more hopeful that could be a competitive game than I am Texas-Arizona State.
Yeah, I don't think that one's going to be close. Although the Arizona State thing is so cool, man.
It's great.
I know there's no moral victories in football, and Arizona State fans and the team and the coaching staff, obviously they want to win. But damned if that's not one of the best stories in college football.
And I think they're going to come out swinging. I don't think we're going to get an SMU situation. We saw SMU early in the ACC championship falter a little bit. Maybe the lights were too bright. To their credit, they came back. They made it a game late. And then they weren't even competitive in the Penn State game. Pick sixes and making mistakes all over the place. I think Arizona State's going to come out with house money, playing loose, playing confident. Kenny Dillingham has had his team playing that way at every turn this year, including the Big 12 championship, where they put out maybe their best performance of the season in a blowout win over Iowa State, who we just saw knock off Miami in the Pop-Tarts Bowl. So I think Arizona State's going to be ready. Is Texas playing a little tight in this game? That to me is the only way that there could be any sort of swing that make you even feel like an upset could be brewing. obviously the talent profile, it is night and day between Texas and Arizona State. And Texas's defense, if they can even limit Cam Scatabo, Quinn Ewers doesn't even have to have a huge day for them to cover the 13-point spread in that game.
Or Texas can't turn the ball over, right? I mean, I think they had, something like 7 total turnovers in the 2 Georgia losses that they've had this year. That could be, not that, to make that game even competitive, Arizona State would have to turn Texas over and have to have that pressure be squarely on Quinn Ewers' shoulders there to get him to perform to the highest level. If they don't turn the ball over, they win cleanly. They win and they cover.
See if weather has an impact in any of these games, as we have the ReliaQuest Bowl on, and it is...
Yeah, don't be fooled. This isn't a college football playoff game that's going on between Alabama and Michigan, though you might be shocked to see Alabama and Michigan, the defending national champions, in the ReliaQuest Bowl.
Yes, what a shame. The worst bowl name change in the history of bowl games. Bring back the Outback Bowl. I want to see the Bloomin' Onion mascot dancing on the sidelines.
Did they ever have a Blooming Onion mascot?
Yeah, I think they had like a Bloomin' Onion and a coconut shrimp mascot, because that was the whole thing. Like, one team was Team Bloomin' Onion, the other was Team Coconut Shrimp, and... if Alabama was Team Bloomin' Onion and Bama wins, then you get free Bloomin' Onions at Outback the following week.
We used to be a proper country.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We used to be a society. But, yes, this is a rematch from the playoff last year, but it is dumping rain in Tampa right now. I don't know if that'll have an impact in any of these games. Ohio State, Oregon, I have such high hopes for. That chess match, Ryan Day, Chip Kelly versus Dan Lanning.
That'll be the most disappointing game of the weekend because we all have tremendous hopes for that game to be.
What did we have the biggest hopes for in the first round? Yeah. Ohio State, Tennessee. But we've seen Ohio State, Oregon.
You just can't envision either one of these teams. Like, they may come out slow. They may start the game slow. They may not have as high-flying a performance as either of these teams you may expect, given the level of, the talent that both of these teams possess. But the thing that I don't expect is one team to get blown out. I can't envision that with where these teams have been. There have been moments like Oregon. We've talked about the struggle against Wisconsin that they had this year, that they were able to survive and route to an undefeated record. We certainly talked about that Ohio State-Michigan game a great many times, but a blowout is not something that I would foresee. A slog, maybe, not a blowout.
Jordan on the F&M Bank chat says, Alabama-Michigan played in a bowl game the first day of 2024 and the last day of 2024.
I'm sure Alabama fans take great solace in that.
Very different scenarios playing out.
You have headlines?
I have plenty of NFL headlines.
They're next. Chilly winter temperatures are right around the corner. Be sure not to leave your wealth management goals out in the cold. Call Trajan Wealth today, because we've all asked ourselves the question at some point in time, no matter where you are in your career, will I have enough money when I retire? When should I start to draw from Social Security? If these are the questions keeping you up at night, let me introduce you to that Trajan Wealth team that's there to keep you on the right track and guide you through it. TRAJAN Wealth is not just any financial firm. They are your partners in securing your financial future, and they're more than just a fiduciary firm. They're a family-owned, veteran-led team that puts your needs first. Let their decades of experience specializing in retirement planning and wealth management work for you. Trajan Wealth offers free consultations to help you develop your plan and, most importantly, your peace of mind. So call them today at 615-270-5000. That's 615-270-5000, or visit them online at TrajanWealth.com. Advisory services offered through Trajan Wealth, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. This is a paid advertisement.
It's time for headlines with Lucas Panzica.
Now, Jackson asked me what I was cackling about when that started. Do you not know what happened back there?
Nope, nothing to see here.
Yeah, he's just
Are you sure?
Sweeping it.
Just
sweeping it under
just
the rug.
the dead
Sweep that one
silence
under
and
the
then
rug.
the stuttering start.
Remix NFL headlines.
I mean, it's just so fitting. I suppose we're not doing New Year's resolutions as a show because why would we even attempt to be better when we know actively that there's nothing that's going to make us better? We're just completely incompetent on a regular basis. Don't drown me out.
He's
I'm
literally
bitching.
trying to drown
Stop
you
it.
out. That's great.
Get out of here.
The MSNBC remix. Fantastic. Let's just make that a permanent thing. All right. Clinching
May
scenarios.
last longer than MSNBC.
From week 17 in the NFL, let's go through some of them here. The Kansas City Chiefs are officially the 1 seed after a 29-10 win over the Pittsburgh Steelers on Christmas Day. Will they rest their starters against the Denver Broncos? Andy Reid has certainly been one to play his quarterback and other starters, even in meaningless games and preseason games. We don't know. We don't know if Patrick Mahomes and company will play against the Denver Broncos. Here's the thing. If they don't, you're talking about over 3 weeks off without playing a snap, as there is chaos happening in the Reliant
did
Quest
you
Bowl.
just see the way that Milroe lost that fumble?
This game is being played in a mud pit right now. This is awesome. This is like backyard. This is the type
Future
of weather.
Titans legend Jalen Milroe.
This is the type of weather that when you're like 10 years old, you see what's happening outside, say, let's get outside right now and start rolling around in the mud with the
Unless
football.
you're the team that just had that football in their hands, botched the snap, then tried to jump on it, and it literally squirted out of a pile of Alabama players.
Those white Bama jerseys are going to be covered in mud at the end of this. This is awesome.
Certainly they're not covered in glory this year.
No, not quite. But
So I'm enjoying way too much Alabama and Michigan, both in the Reliant Quest Bowl.
I don't blame you. A lot of good bowl games today. Should Patrick Mahomes and Chiefs starters play against the Broncos? Now, there are teams that would love for them to play against the Broncos. The Dolphins need the Broncos to lose. The Bengals need the Broncos to lose. Is it worth it? Is it worth it to roll them out there if the alternative is them not playing football for 25 days between their last regular season appearance and the divisional round?
Andy Reid plays guys. Like, that's just what they do. They do it in the preseason. They're probably going to do it in this game. I mean, is it worth it? You've had a couple of scares with Mahomes this year. To your point, they're starting to round back into form as far as health goes. You wait to see. I wouldn't play Chris Jones. Certainly, I wouldn't play Chris Jones. But we'll wait to see what they do there as far as that goes. But there's nothing that tells me that Andy Reid isn't going to take the exact same Dan Campbell approach, which is we play to win these games. We're going to go out there with the mindset of bouncing a divisional rival out of the postseason this way. So, I mean, is it worth it to most fans? I feel like most fans probably would say no. Certainly if you're a Chiefs fan, you're sitting on pins and needles at the idea. Now, here's the thing. Just because you start them doesn't mean that you have to do the Dan Campbell thing. Dan Campbell played every starter that entire game. Like, they played that whole game. You don't have to play them this entire game. You can treat it more like a preseason, put them in for a half and see how it goes, see if you can't get a comfortable lead or however that might play itself out, or even if you end up losing at this point because you've got the first round bye, you've got home field advantage. We could have just simmed the season and gotten that way through the AFC anyway for what the Chiefs typically do and how they typically do it. So most fans would probably say, no, it's not worth it. Sit your starters. Andy Reid's probably saying, yeah, but if we do, these guys need to play. These guys need to operate at a certain level, and they need to be able to play football in order to do just that.
Bengals will be watching closely because they play on Saturday, and they
What
need
an electric game that was, by the way. Zach Taylor making it more of a
Bengals
game
Broncos
than it absolutely
incredible.
should be. Zach Taylor, I mean, this is what makes me skeptical of anything that's going to come out of the Bengals organization, including what's going on here, by the way, is not everybody has a Joe Burrow to bail you out. And Zach Taylor, 100%. Got bailed out, had no business getting bailed out by an excellent quarterback.
If Joe Burrow does not play in these NFL playoffs, it's a crime. It's a crime against humanity.
A crime.
I mean, this is insane what he is doing. He
crime.
Has 4,641 pass yards, 42 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. He is completing about 70% of his passes this year.
It's so unreal.
His career completion percentage at this point is at 68.4%. It is the best in NFL history. I mean, it's just unbelievable what he's doing. Jamar Chase stands to win the Triple Crown as a wide receiver, and the Bengals need to not just win on Saturday, but they need the Dolphins to lose to the Jets. Or tie, yep. And they need...
Which would be a great way for
the
season end.
And they need the Chiefs to beat the Broncos. So Bengals do not control their own destiny here, but I mean, Ravens fans are going to be watching on bated breath. Bills fans are going to be watching on bated breath with hopes to avoid the Cincinnati Bengals.
With bated breath, not on bated breath.
Is it with or on? I've heard it both ways.
Well, I'm still trying to figure out why your proof is in pudding, but we can move on.
We never looked that up, did we?
No, we just move on
I
like
did.
we
We
typically
just never
do.
went to it.
What happened? What is it?
Let me pull it back up.
Why was the proof in the pudding?
Yeah, way to come to the microphone saying that we had the information and then saying that I need to go look it up the information again.
So Bengals need help. Joe Burrow's playing incredible football. T. Higgins was the star in terms of the wide receiver position for them last Saturday in that thrilling overtime win.
Also future Titans legend.
Doink of all doinks with the Bengals backup kicker.
Kevin Harlan on every game of consequence, please. Just the way that he screams, "Miss Doink!" He's so excellent. And this is meaning no offense to you because I know you do play-by-play or you're trying to do play-by-play for more of a living than having to, just sit here with me for 3 hours a day. I want Kevin Harlan is the best play-by-play person out there. I don't care who's on the best games. I don't care who's on the number one team. Kevin Harlan is the GOAT, radio, TV, or otherwise.
Yeah, well, the proof is just in the pudding when you listen and or watch him.
I have the meaning. Okay, so it originates from an older expression. The proof of the pudding is in the eating, meaning that you can only truly judge the quality of a pudding, which historically referred as a savory meat dish, by actually tasting it, essentially signifying that the only way to know if something is good is to try it yourself.
We should just say that the only way to know is to try it yourself.
No, the proof is in the pudding.
That's the way.
The proof is in the pudding.
That's such a roundabout way to get to. Just try it yourself to find out whether it's good or not.
Dixie on the F&M
How long
Big
has that
Chat.
existed? Who is the first person to say, by the end of this segment, I want to know the first person to say,
17th century.
Okay.
There you go.
Very good.
Dixie says Bengals versus Bills wildcard game would be electric. Bills want to avoid that. I mean, who wants to play the Bengals right now?
I mean, plenty of people would like Josh Allen would feast on the Bengals defense, but I would not want to see Joe Burrow on the other side.
Speaking of the Bills, they have clinched the 2 seed in the AFC with a 40-14 win against the Jets. Josh Allen will start against the New England Patriots. Titans fans obviously will have an eye towards that. If the Titans were to fall against Houston and the Patriots were to beat Buffalo, the Titans would have the number 1 overall pick in the draft. Josh Allen will start, but there's an asterisk because it is simply to keep his starting streak alive. He has started 114 consecutive games. It's the longest active streak in the NFL. It is sounding like they're going to roll him out there, give him that official start, and then pull him because the Bills have clinched the 2 seed, and there is no reason to risk injury there.
Bert was fuming about the idea that they would Cam Ward, essentially, Josh Allen. And, Cam Ward obviously played a half and was excellent in that half and did not need to play anymore, although there was some talk about putting him in for the last drive just to give Miami a chance, down 1 in that Iowa State game, or in that Pop-Tarts Bowl game against Iowa State. Bert was fuming about the idea that Josh Allen would just be out there so that he can get his start record or continue his start record.
I don't mind it.
I mean, I didn't seem to care, but Bert's been fuming about Josh Allen all year because he wants Lamar to win a 3rd MVP.
Yes, that is true. Maybe there are some underlying motives there.
To me, quickly, because obviously the story for the Titans, just to make it a local tie, is the draft order, so you keep an eye closely on that. With the Texans starting their ones here in Nashville with the Bills, expected to start Josh Allen against the Patriots, who currently hold the number 1 overall pick, and that situation is going to be curious to see if they do roll Drake May out at quarterback as he's dealing with some stuff. Would hate to see Drake May further exacerbate an injury at the end of a year when they're not going anywhere in 2024. The thing about that Bills game quickly, though, before we move on, is the Jets have been broken for a while, but that Bills game signified all the different like Aaron Rodgers things coming to fruition. Did you see him get an unnecessary roughness penalty?
After throwing an interception?
That is such an insult to injury moment. Because I saw it on Twitter, the unnecessary roughness penalty, or that Aaron Rodgers had received an unnecessary roughness penalty, and I was trying to figure out what the hell happened, and then I saw the replay.
I mean, Adam Schefter tweeting before this game, Aaron Rodgers looking for his 500th career touchdown pass. Devontae Adams going to play because he wants to catch the 500th touchdown pass. He's got the 200th and 400th touchdown passes of Aaron Rodgers' career. He wants number 500. And then you've got Garrett Wilson talking about we're not a team, we're individuals after the game in the locker room. Things are bad. Things are bad with the New York Jets.
Things are bad.
Speaking of clinching.
Had him in the Super Bowl this year.
The Eagles, you did. The Eagles have clinched the NFC East. Jalen Hurts was in concussion protocol. He did not play on Sunday. Kenny Pickett got the start. He went down with a rib injury. Tanner McKee came in, the third stringer, actually played pretty well.
Diced him up.
Didn't matter. Saquon Barkley is over 2,000 yards on the season. He had 167 on the ground. The Eagles cannot get the 1 seed in the NFC. So does Saquon play against the Giants on Sunday when he only needs 101 yards to break Eric Dickerson's all-time single-season rushing record?
Eric Dickerson's rooting against him. Eric Dickerson does not want to see that record broken. It was like who's the former Jets defensive end that was menacing over Brett Favre recently because he was alleging that Brett Favre fell into a sack to allow Michael Strahan to break the record. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah. Oh man. Yeah, he walked up to Brett Favre and it got really
Mark
tense.
Something?
I can't remember.
Forgive me.
Eric Dickerson predicted he won't break it in an interview. Look, I agree with Kevin Dyson, who said this on Titans Talk Back Sunday. There's got to be an asterisk there. You're doing it.
Gastineau. That's who it is.
Yes, there you go. Because he'd be doing it with one extra game, and that's totally fair. Eric Dickerson did it in 16. Barkley would be doing it in 17. But yeah, what he's doing is insane. Saquon has just been unbelievable. He's getting a lot more carries, a lot more usage than he typically has. He has smashed his career high in carries on a season, but they dominated the Cowboys Sunday. And talk about poetic justice. There's no way he doesn't play on Sunday, right? To break that record against the Giants?
For no other reason, because there are reports that the Giants are going to bring Joe Shane, the person that gave Daniel Jones a contract, the person that let Saquon Barkley go to the Philadelphia Eagles and have the kind of year that he's having, that the Giants are going to bring that person back to make future decisions for the franchise. I'd go out there if I was Saquon just to be like, no, you can't keep this person. Watch me. Just watch me. Watch me with your own eyes as I decimate your team.
The Washington Commanders, keeping it in the NFC East, clinched a playoff spot on Sunday Night Football 2 days ago. They improved to 11-5 with an overtime win over the Falcons, 30-24. Jaden Daniels, phenomenal. Just unbelievable in this game. Clutch moment after clutch moment. He was 24 of 36, 227 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. He had 127 yards on the ground, smashing RG3's record for rushing yards by a rookie quarterback. Daniels had 815. Going into that game, he needed to hit 837, and he obliterated it. Not the only record he broke, because Jaden Daniels has thrown 12 fourth quarter and overtime touchdowns this year, the most by a rookie in NFL history. That dude has just got it. I mean, there is not a fan base in the NFL.
Wait, does he have more dude or more dog, since that's the way that you typically, in all of your wisdom?
He has the perfect blend of dog and dudeness. Because, seriously, the way that he is so calm, cool, and collected, kind of smiling, walking out onto the field before these big moments. It was cool to see Marcus Mariota kind of settling him down before that clutch play in overtime.
Don't ruin my Friday fire. Shut up.
Okay.
Shut up.
Okay. But he does have that blend of dog and dudeness. Without a doubt, you got to have it. Jaden Daniels does, and there's no fan base in the NFL that has gone more rags to riches, 0 to 100 in terms of vibes than the Washington Commanders fan base. None. And they are in the playoffs in year one of this entire experience. A lot of credit should go to Dan Quinn, but Jaden Daniels quietly is having one of the best rookie seasons by a quarterback we have ever seen.
So there's a couple of different things happening in Washington that I think are worth noting, because if the Titans do end up with the number 2 overall pick, I think there's people that are going to talk themselves into, see what can happen when you have a top pick at quarterback, how much it can change your fortunes as a franchise. Please do not use the Washington Commanders as your blueprint for what you think the Titans will or will not do in 2025, because there's a variety of different things going on there that are important to note, and let me count the ways in which they are different. 1, there is no Jaden Daniels in this draft class. Cam Ward is an interesting player, and he may go on to be a pro, but he's not the prospect that Jaden Daniels. These guys aren't the prospects that McCarthy was coming out as far as NFL talent evaluators see him. Now, NFL talent evaluators get it wrong all the time. These guys, Ward and Shadeur, could go on to have excellent NFL careers, and we could all be fools for dismissing them or downplaying their significance compared to what was last year's draft class. But again, as prospects, they are not Jaden Daniels. The other part of this is, what is the rest of Washington's roster comprised of? There are a great many players who have been on different NFL organizations, who have Super Bowl caliber pedigrees, who bring a level of leadership and experience to that roster to help foster the environment for Jaden Daniels to be successful.
Yeah, like the one who caught the game-winning touchdown in overtime, tight end Zach Ertz.
Zach Ertz is, he's definitely at the tail end of his career, but he and his experience matters there. I'm blanking on the linebacker's name. The former
Bobby Wagner.
Bobby Wagner, who's been doing it for 100 years and who Dan Quinn sought out personally to make sure that he was a part of the culture that was being built. I don't like to traffic in the culture stuff a lot unless it is tangibly evident that a team has a successful one that you can point to all the different ways. Dan Quinn, as a program builder, as a culture builder, matters there. The players that they have brought in, Austin Eckler is one of those. I know that he has had a season derailed by concussion, unfortunately, but he is a player of great consequence that matters there, brings that experience, brings that leadership. There are a bunch of different things that the Titans have to go out and acquire this offseason that the Commanders should not be the comparison. I know people like to draw parallels between the way that the Lions started under Dan Campbell to how this nonsense has gone. And even then, I'm reminded as I'm watching that game last night, did you catch the part where they interview the Lions owner, Martha Ford? Forgive me, I think there's a hyphenated thing. But they show an interview of her speaking with media, talking about the Lions' 1-5 start. I think this was in...
Oh, yeah, this was year 2 of Dan Campbell.
2022?
Yeah, she did a scrum on the practice field. And it was 1-5 in year 2 of Dan Campbell.
And she was out there providing context for, hey, here's what we see. Here's why it matters. Here's why my decision is going to be steadfast. Imagine what it would be like to have that level of comfort, to know from a person who runs this thing that there is a plan, that can confidently articulate the plan beyond just saying the generalities that people say at press conferences when people are hired, like Super Bowl aspirations, fans deserve better, last year was unacceptable, all these different things that the Titans organization has not provided their fan base because the owner is not available to comment publicly like Martha Ford is at this point in time. There's a great many differences between these comparisons that I think a lot of Titans fans are trying to make. And that, by the way, doesn't mean that you can't have it. Just means that the evidence is not there yet. But that is what they're tasked with this offseason, not to make this a whole Titan segment.
Quickly, to go back to the Saquon thing, I just saw this on ESPN. Nick Sirianni reportedly has not decided whether or not Barkley will play on Sunday to break that record.
Oh, you got to play him.
He says he will talk to everyone in the organization, including the Eagles owner, before making that call.
You have to play him.
Last thing.
You have to give him a shot at the record, don't you?
I would think so. I'd be surprised if they didn't.
Is this important enough because we're up against it?
Oh, it's just quickly, the Jets are interviewing Ron Rivera and Rex Ryan for their head coaching jobs. And Mike Vrabel is officially clear to be interviewed. His time as a consult with the Cleveland Browns has ended. And
consultant.
Alabama is melting down in the ReliaQuest Bowl.
Is DeBoer going to make it to year 2?
Of course he is. They have the number 1 recruiting class in the country. Don't be foolish.
I don't know. Bama fans are probably thinking that way. Coming up next, Dion's got a Twitter presence. Why does it matter to you? Find out. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone. Welcome back to the show. We are fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken. So there's a great many people here locally interested in draft as opposed to actual football games being played, other than you're rooting for your football team to lose, which is completely understandable at this point in time. 3-13, they're going absolutely nowhere other than jockeying for draft position. Now, one could make the case. It's not actively tanking because I do believe that they're still going to try and win a football game, but the dual quarterback situation does not necessarily indicate to me that they're going to give themselves 100% the best chance or 100% try the hardest to go out there and win that football game, though, that may be just the way that I read it, given that Brian Callahan said that both Mason Rudolph and Will Levis are going to play in this final game against the Houston Texans. But the draft order is the most important thing at this point in time. It'll continue to be the most important thing. How they address it will be the next most important thing, how they manage this draft situation, because they need a home run. And whether it's Rand Carthon and his staff doing it or another general manager situation, should something arise based on the way that this thing has gone this year, somebody is going to have a home run draft for the Tennessee Titans. And it may very well involve a quarterback if you have the number 1 overall pick or the number 2 overall pick at this point in time. Shadeur Sanders, son of Dion, is going to be in the conversation for the number 1 or number 2 overall pick. Dion has publicly talked a great many times about the level of influence he plans to have on Shadeur's draft situation, on Shiloh's draft situation, the safety grad student who's also Dion's son, and Travis Hunter's situation, who Dion many times calls Travis Hunter his son, and I'm sure that's not the only player on the Buffalo's roster that Dion refers to as family that way. There was a fake news account putting out fake reports yesterday. I'm not going to give the handle because that would just give more life to the fake report. But essentially, it was a troll account putting out there that Shadeur specifically had no interest in playing for 2 NFL organizations, the Titans and the Browns. And that Dion alleging falsely, again, I say fake news, alleging falsely that Deion Sanders wanted his son to go to a big market team that had greater infrastructure to develop a quarterback. All of these things fake from a fake account. The person that put this out is not real. If Jackson had bothered to read his Twitter bio yesterday before sending us the fake report, he would have noticed that said fake reporter was a reporter for ASMR Sports. Well done by you.
Great outlet, ASMR Sports.
Well, that makes
I read a lot of their stuff.
That makes me wonder about your algorithm. Be careful what you say in front of microphones, bud.
It's one of those fake accounts that does a good job of sprinkling in real stuff.
Just a good enough job, right?
Yeah. And they just have this regular looking guy as the profile picture and says husband and father in the Twitter bio. NFL and New York Giants
It
insider.
also called for somebody to bring them a decapitated head if you further scroll down their tweet. So let's not get too crazy with how real this person is trying to make their troll account seem. Either way.
Do you not do that on Twitter on a weekly basis?
Call for people's decapitated heads?
Yes.
I mean, it's getting closer and closer to that, if I'm being honest. But no, I haven't gone quite that far as to actively advocate for acts of violence. Anyway, Deion Sanders, fed up with it, he gets on social media to refute fake reports. Also, Deion Sanders Jr. does this as well. So the Sanders family is just keeping this fake report in the news cycle, but it does speak to a larger theme that Dion touches on social media yesterday. So he gets on Twitter to set the record straight. Quote, it will be multiple idiots that will say things that totally aren't true regarding where I would like at Shadeur Sanders and at Shiloh Sanders to play in the NFL. If I say it, I will say it directly to whom it may concern, not an attention seeker. He also goes on to mention that he knows Roger Goodell personally, the commissioner of the NFL. I'm not sure why that's relevant. But, I don't know if Dion is going to be like, hey, Raj, if a team that I don't want to draft my son tries to draft my son, do me a solid here, would you? And then he ends it with a mic drop. So the report's fake, whatever. It does still speak to Dion's level of influence here. Whichever organization is interested in drafting Shadeur specifically, or Travis Hunter, because Travis Hunter is arguably the most talented player in the draft, you are going to have to account for the Dion factor. You have to be equipped, stable, functional to be able to manage a mega personality. I mean, how many people? There's not that many people that are more influential at any level of the sport than Deion Sanders. He is respected by basically everyone, both college and pro. Certainly athletes revere him of basically any generation. Would you, Lucas, you'd be better equipped to answer this than I am. Is Deion Sanders not the face of college football these last 2 seasons? Whether they wanted to be or not, the coverage has made Deion Sanders a de facto face of college football to me. Who would you argue is then?
I don't know that there is a uniform face of college football. You know, Deion Sanders is no doubt this huge figure that is in college football. But the thing with Deion is discussions around Deion and Colorado are not really about college football. They're about Deion and Colorado. You know, I mean, discussions around Nick Saban are about the way that when he was still coaching in Alabama and was the face of college football, how he's evolving with the way college football is going, what Nick Saban said about the state of college football, how we should follow this and that. So, no, that's tough for me to say, but I also can't give you a figure that is saying, no, this is actually the face of college football.
We don't have to spend too much time on it. But here's my point with this, okay? So let's say that the Titans have a level of interest in Shadeur. And if you're picking one or two, you have to at least explore the possibility, whether or not you're very, very interested in drafting that player, whether that's your QB1 or the player at the top of your draft board or not. You have to at least consider the possibility because this team needs to desperately address the quarterback position. No matter how they address the quarterback position, they have to do it in a multitude of ways this offseason. Here's what I'll tell you is the best case for Ran Carthon. If moving forward, right, for Ran Carthon to be the person that makes that pick, his biggest attribute that continues to be cited, biggest strength that continues to be cited by the people that hired him, by people with the organization, people in organizations that he's worked with prior, are his ability to foster relationships, continue to grow those relationships, manage relationships, essentially a level of diplomacy that your average general manager may not have. Because a lot of scouts don't have personality for jack. If I'm being completely honest, that's not their job. They want to be about ball all the time. And it's not to say that Rand's not, but he does bring that level of personal relationship that some people may not be able to navigate, especially with a figure like Deion Sanders. Now, whether or not that's the tipping point for an organization like the Titans, Deion may not be interested in the Titans. Deion may very well be interested in the Titans. You have no idea what Deion Sanders is thinking, because what he's saying is that he is going to handle these things, that he's going to do it. He's copped to saying, yeah, I'm going to be involved in these guys' draft processes. Of course I'm going to be. He's seen it from both sides. Nobody nobody better than a former NFL player, and he's not just an NFL player, he's a legend, former college football star, former NFL star, to be able to navigate the muck, the sewage that is the NFL draft process, because people are going to lie. There are going to be reports that are out there. There are going to be reports that are fed to people from organizations that are trying to tank people's draft stock so that they can have a better opportunity to draft a player. This is one of the stickiest situations that the NFL calendar presents, is navigating all the slop that is the draft process and trying to come out clean on the other side in the best possible position for the player, not the team. And I think Deion should be commended for wielding that level of influence. I think he should absolutely do everything in his power. I think there are going to be people who aren't interested in dealing with Deion. I think those people are foolish. He has turned a nobody program, even though Colorado has winning in its history. He turned that place around from a 1-win program to 4 wins his second year, 9 wins and a bowl berth, even if they lost the Alamo Bowl in his second year. I think Deion should be celebrated for the way that he's done it unconventionally. I think he should be even further applauded for being that level of protective over his sons and other Colorado players who will come out in this draft process. And I think he should be able to wield that level of influence, because there's a bunch of bad NFL organizations out there that could ruin these players if measures aren't taken into somebody's hands that can actually influence the process. So whether or not the Titans factor in, there's going to be speculation. It's going to make your head spin. You're going to want to know all the information possible, but Deion's got a social media presence. If he wants you to know about it, I imagine he'd tell you about it, because sure as hell he's going to tell these organizations about it. 615-737-1045 is the number. Coming up next, we are going to jump into the column that was written in the Tennessean yesterday about the general manager situation for the Tennessee Titans and whether or not the people in charge of the front office should continue to be the people in charge. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone.
It is 12:01. Good afternoon. I'm Lucas Panzica from the 104.5 The Zone studios, and Happy New Year. The Tennessee Titans off today, back on the practice field tomorrow, preparing for the regular season finale against the Houston Texans Sunday. Brian Callahan met with the media yesterday and said that both Mason Rudolph and Will Levis will likely play at quarterback against the Texans. The Nashville Predators were blanked at the Winnipeg Jets Monday, 3-0. They'll stay on the road visiting the Minnesota Wild tonight. Puck drop at 7 p.m. And the college football playoff resumes tonight in the quarterfinals. Penn State and Boise State in the Fiesta Bowl at 6:30. Tomorrow, Texas and Arizona State kick off at noon. Ohio State and Oregon play in the Rose Bowl at 4 p.m. Notre Dame and Georgia face off at 7:45. For all your foundation repairs and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
So a column went up on the newspaper yesterday at Tennessean.com from Gentry Estes, who's the columnist there. And it's titled, How can the Tennessee Titans expect Rand Carthon and Chad Brinker to turn this around? Now, this is coming off the heels of the latest defeat. That's 13 on the season, 13 losses on the season for the Tennessee Titans, 3-13. This season has been an unending nightmare, though it will soon be over. And the happiness of the offseason, the transactions, all the ways that you can try and, in your mind, put this thing back together, pieces and parts. It'll be fun again because it won't be playing football. It won't be watching them screw around and get swept by a Jags team that has 4 wins on the season and you account for half of them. And the case is being made. It's the first person to actively call for anybody's job, coach, front office, or otherwise, other than Will Levis, because there have been people who had advocated for Will Levis to be benched prior to him actually getting benched. And, I'm not going to read the whole column the way that I did a couple of weeks ago, but the summary is this graph. It's time for meaningful change, and it should start by moving on from the tandem of general manager Rand Carthon and Chad Brinker, the president of football operations, Gentry writes. There's no sugarcoating this anymore. It's bad, really bad. Maybe the worst it's ever been for the Titans in Tennessee. Again, 2014, way worse. This isn't a quick fix. It's going to take time to get back to respectability, and that's the best reason for Amy Adams Strunk to shake things up now. Should Carthon and Brinker be retained in their current roles, they'll be fighting for their jobs under so much pressure to win immediately in 2025 that they'd naturally make short-sighted moves based on self-preservation rather than pursuing the long-term reset this franchise needs. It's time for a new approach, preferably authored by a seasoned football executive who has ample patience and support from ownership. So there's going to be opinions on this one way or the other. And like I said, I'm going to wait till the season's over to say what I think they should do versus what they will do. But I think this column is nonsense. I think it's total nonsense because not because of the firing part. It's because of the graph that he puts in right after this. For the record, I'm not calling for Coach Brian Callahan to be fired after one season. I wouldn't do that, though I'd understand if Adam Strunk, in the hopes of finally putting her GM and coach on the same timetable, viewed this as an opportunity to clean house. And it goes on at some length, and like I said, we don't have to read all of it. You cannot, you can. You can write whatever you want. You can have whatever opinion that you want, but it should be backed up by better fact and situations other than, well, of course these people would make rash decisions in the nature of self-preservation because that's what anybody would do. No, you don't know that. You have no idea what their decision-making process would look like if they're retained. You sure as hell don't know what the level of patience from ownership is, though there has been some reason to think that the patience from ownership is fraying more with the front office than it is with the coaching staff, given that there are reports coming out about the coaching staff expected to return in 2024, or rather 2025, but nothing about the front office at this point in time. Maybe quiet is a good thing, maybe it's not. But I think it's totally ridiculous to call for the heads of Rand Carthon and Chad Brinker while saying that Brian Callahan should retain his job. You either clean house or you keep it all, because there is so much financial investment. Imagine them, and I don't know, I don't have an exact figure, off the top of my head in terms of salary, in terms of resources, in terms of all the, necessarily programming and equipment that would be required to get their data science operation off the ground the way that they have dumped money into it, personnel into it over the course of the last 2 seasons since they put Brinker in charge of that and Rand Carthon being promoted to his position. If they did that, I would think so little of this organization. If they fired Rand Carthon and Chad Brinker and not the coaching staff. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know what my position is going to be next week when we talk about this. Keep it all or fire it all. I'm going to wait the full amount of time before I make that declaration, even though we've talked around a lot of this stuff and even though there's been plenty of reasons to question what's in place on a 3-13 football team and whether or not these people who have not been capable of doing anything with a more talented roster or anything of consequence with a more talented roster should continue to be responsible for this franchise's future.
Yeah, I'm confused on what, a regular season finale against the Texans could do to change any opinion.
Well, honestly, I'm going to go back and watch every game. I'm going to go back and watch every game and work my way back through it because there's some stuff that we forget. There's some stuff that gets left out, whether that's the player's fault, whether that's the coach's fault, whether that's a personnel issue. I would like to rewatch, basically. I'm going to rewatch, God help me, I'm going to rewatch this entire season before I come on here because these games don't matter. Well, I'm not going to spend more time rewatching the Texans game or the Jags game at this point in time, and I started that last night with that Bears game, which hits just as hard the second time around as it did the first time with the way that game was lost. But even still, you cannot, in good conscience, advocate for these people to lose their jobs and keep the coach. I think that's one of the dumbest arguments or opinions that's been put out there, and I don't have a personal issue with Gentry. I tell him this personally. We could debate it. Perhaps we'll bring him on the podcast and talk about it on Friday or something to that effect. But it's either keep it or get rid of it all. Don't piecemeal this thing together, because if you do, that speaks to the exact kind of dysfunction and instability that's already being alleged. It would just give people proof that exists and that we're going to Mike Mularkey, John Robinson our way through another front office coaching administration that isn't on the same page. And listen, I get that people don't clean house as often as you might think that they do. And I get that people don't hire a general manager and a coach on the same timeline as often as you might think organizations do. I think if anything, the case is way more sensible to make for the inverse as opposed to the coaching staff being kept and the front office being cleared out, because all the front office did was go out and use the resources that you provided them to get you a significantly more talented roster that your coaching staff failed miserably with at this point in time, even if the vast majority of the blame, and there is the vast majority of the blame, is placed at one player's feet, and that is Will Levis.
I think I agree with you. I mean, it is true that Zach came in here after the show yesterday and we started talking about it, and then I really started looking at it, and it's a lot more rare than we think. The idea of franchises having coaches and GMs on the same timeline. That's not always the case. I mean, GMs often hire the coaches, and GMs have been in place. Ryan Poles has been in place. Ryan Poles is going to hire the next coach of the Bears. It's going to be, the third head coach under Ryan Poles since he was the GM of the Bears. So there's probably more organizations in the NFL that have GM and coach on a different timeline than the alternative. But there are some. The Commanders, obviously. The Chargers hired Joe Ortiz and then went and got Jim Harbaugh. But I think I'm with you that if you're going to make a change, then you totally clean house, although I'm not on the side of clean house. I don't think that's the answer. I don't think you have the definitive answer on what this GM and head coach duo is after 1 year of Brian Callahan. I just don't. I don't think there is a complete grade on Brian Callahan as a head coach or on Rand Carthon as a general manager. Some do. I do not. But I agree with you that if you're going to make one change, then kind of get back to square one. But that does bring you... It pushes you even further down the mountain that you already have to climb.
It would show a clear and obvious lack of direction. They may not have a plan of consequence that they can articulate at this point in time. I'm talking about Amy Adams Strunk as the owner, the person tasked with making these decisions at the end of the day. But nothing would scream, we don't know what the hell we're doing, than after retaining the general manager in a, you can call it a power struggle if you want to with Mike Vrabel and Rand Carthon, but it wasn't really that. It was more a power struggle with Mike Vrabel and the ownership and the business people that he wasn't getting along with, because there was plenty of that going on. I think that it would articulate such a lack of direction from this franchise if you did what Gentry Estes is advocating for, which is firing one half of this tandem or these two people as the front office representation of this tandem and keeping the coach in place. I couldn't believe that I was reading that in the newspaper yesterday. And listen, this is a season filled with fireable offenses, filled with them across the board, from players to coaches to front office. You can't fire ownership, but that's what it is. Like, this has been an unrelenting suffering for the fan base. I can't imagine. I cannot imagine. But if you want to make them feel worse, you show them that you don't have a plan by letting go of these two people and keeping the coach that they hired. That cannot be justified in any way, shape, or form. And if it ends up happening, then we've got our entire conversation for the rest of the offseason about what the hell this organization is trying to do. 615-737-1045 is the number. If you want to jump in, you can do that, whether you're weighing in on the Titans or weighing in on the draft. Let's start with David.
Hey, man, long time listener, first time caller. Just go with me here for just a second. So as I'm thinking about the draft and thinking about where we are, here's what I'm wondering. I watch a lot of college football, and I feel like the best two players that I saw this year were Travis Hunter and Genty, whatever his name is, out of Boise State. Those are generational players to me. I don't feel like Sanders or Ward, some of those top two quarterbacks, I don't feel like they're generational talents. I mean, look at Washington last year.
There's no such thing as a generational talent, and I wish people would stop using that word, but go ahead.
Okay, but my point is this. Look at how bad the Commanders were last year, and look at what Jaden Daniels, look at the difference he made for them team. My question is this. Are the Titans better off to take a player that's solid, that they know can help them in the future, or do you just say, our quarterback situation stinks, we've all suffered for it, do we just get a quarterback and land that plane, or do we bring in a veteran and sign one of these players that you know you can have on your roster forever and wait till a better quarterback comes around? Because I feel like Sanders would be a third or fourth round pick if it were a normal draft with better quarterbacks. I'm just curious of your thoughts.
Why can't you do both? Why can't
Maybe
you draft a guy and bring in a vet? There's nothing that's preventing them from doing that.
That's true, but don't you think Rudolph could be the backup long term? If Levis is not the answer, he's proven he's a backup and not a starter.
I mean, sure, I guess. But
yeah, Rudolph could absolutely be your backup next year. Like, it wouldn't take that much to reset.
Be a part of it, but like, there's nothing to say that they can't draft Shadeur or Cam Ward and bring in Derek Carr. Like, there's absolutely nothing from preventing them from doing that. And if the draft pick ends up being the backup for the season or a part of the season, that's fine. And if the draft pick beats out the veteran, then that's fine too. Like, there's a variety of different. There's no definitive way that they can. I mean, there are a finite number of options that they have to address it, but it's not going to be like one thing or the other definitively. That's not how this works.
Right. No, that makes sense. All right. Well, hey, go Gators.
Okay.
I have a question for you. Who has the best quarterback situation in the NFL? That's not really that debatable.
The Chiefs.
The Chiefs, right. Okay, Pat Mahomes did not start as a rookie, had a veteran in Alex Smith, who he backed up and then started his second year and took off from there. Who else? What are some of the best quarterback situations around the NFL?
Well, you could use that same example and cite Love, even though Aaron Rodgers was kind of holding that organization hostage. You don't know how much sooner they might have tried to play Love if they could have gotten rid of Rodgers before they were.
Who knows
when
what
they were
rookie Jordan Love out of Utah State would have looked like?
No.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
Jordan Love benefited from sitting behind Aaron Rodgers, like Aaron Rodgers benefited from sitting behind Brett Favre.
Sure.
Regardless of how helpful or unhelpful.
I just don't think it's turnkey, right? Like, would Jaden Daniels have benefited from sitting? No. Maybe. I don't know. But he's doing a great job without it.
But those are, you might get one of those in every draft. Now, this year, we are seeing Jaden Daniels and Bo Nix do those things. And Michael Penix played well. Michael Penix also got the chance to sit for most of the season behind Kirk Cousins. Lamar Jackson got the chance to sit behind Joe Flacco. More often than not, the best situations are guys that got that opportunity, that had that situation with a veteran and a rookie, oftentimes with the veteran starting as the stopgap. I really hope that NFL teams more and more, as we see the likes of Bryce Young, Anthony Richardson, Will Levis struggle mightily as rookies, move away from this idea that you have to start them day one. You have to.
It's why I think that the Titans fans that thought Sam Darnold would be available are full of it, because Kevin O'Connell has been preaching this about development with quarterbacks all year long, prior to even making the decision on who his starting quarterback would be. Why on earth would he just throw J.J. McCarthy to the Wolves, let Sam Darnold walk to another team instead of doing the most logical thing, which is tag him, keep him, let McCarthy develop, and when he's ready, if Darnold takes a dip, okay, then you can Penix Kirk Cousins this thing and try and keep some continuity there, or try and keep the train on the tracks because you've prepared for this moment. Preparing for the moment is as important as getting the picks right. Preparing the players for their respective moments is as important as getting the picks right. Those things don't have to be separate issues. 615-737-1045 is the number. Jump in if you want to. We'll take more of your phone calls and talk about where, if anywhere, the Titans are improved. Coming up next.
It is lunchtime. That means Hattie B's. That's where I'm headed. In fact, the new year strikes at midnight. What do people do for good luck? On the new year, they eat black-eyed peas. Good news is Hattie B's has the best sides in town, including their fantastic black-eyed peas. Go check out any one of their 7 Middle Tennessee locations, whether it's in Midtown, the factory at Franklin, Lower Broadways, Melrose, Nashville West, the Nashville Airport, even at Nissan Stadium. You've got one more chance to go to Hattie B's at Nissan Stadium during the regular season finale against the Houston Texans on Sunday. Hattie B's, a family-run restaurant that serves up your favorite Southern food and authentic Nashville hot chicken. Hot or not, everything in between. Add your spice level. They hand-bread their fried chicken, cooked to order, and pick your favorite side. Not just the black-eyed peas, southern greens, pimento mac and cheese, bacon, cheese grits, so much more. Skip the line by downloading the Hattie B's app. Order for pickup through the app. Walk in, get your Hattie B's famous hot chicken, and head back to the office, or let them cater your New Year's Eve party tonight. Download the Hattie B's app, by the way. You get a free dessert just by doing so. And go to Hattie B's today.
Welcome back to the show. We are fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken. 615-737-1045 is the number if you want to jump in. You are welcome to do so. F&M Bank Chat, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch also available at your disposal. We'll get to the phone calls here in just a second. Shows are off tomorrow. We would have done live shows had Tennessee beaten Ohio State, but obviously that did not take place, so we will be off tomorrow collectively, but you can join 3HL on Thursday, speaking of chicken, from B-Dubs in Gallatin for their final Titans football feast of the season. You can stop by for chances to win Titans tickets and giveaways each hour thanks to Miller Lite, Kroger, and Buffalo Wild Wings. Plus, be a part of the weekly Miller Lite Wash Away Toast with Ron Slay at 5 p.m. For more info, visit 1045thezone.com/TFF. And I add parenthetically that the wash away toast will never be more appropriate than washing away this 2024 Titans season. To the phones, Will is up next.
Hey guys, how's it going?
It's going good.
So since 2000, do you know how many quarterbacks have been drafted in the first round and have won Super Bowls with that team that drafted them?
Tell me.
4. Peyton Manning, Patrick Mahomes, Ben Roethlisberger, Aaron Rodgers. My question is, if we have a top 2 pick, why would we draft a quarterback if the odds are against us winning a Super Bowl with that quarterback, and instead either trade back, load up on talent, or draft Travis Hunter, trade for T. Higgins, and get a guy like Marcus Mariota or Jacoby Brissett or Geno Smith or somebody that we can actually build around and not think that we're going to draft a quarterback to win us a Super Bowl?
Appreciate the call. And, it's an interesting point. You're not building around Marcus or Jake Brisket at this point in time. Geno's different. Also, Geno's 35. Like, Geno Smith may have 1 or 2 years left at this point in time. And if I played behind that Seattle offensive line, I would also think about hanging it up sooner rather than later. Like, Geno Smith is closer to Matt Stafford's age than he is Jake Brisket or Mariota there. Now, here's the thing that I do find intriguing about that proposition. So I heard Zach bring this up yesterday on their show with Blaine, which you could hear right after this. The idea of, and he said he brought this up on Titans Talkback. Maybe you can speak to it better than I can. He said that he brought up trading out of the number 1 overall pick with the Raiders, getting Max Crosby, getting multiple picks, and trying to better fortify the rest of the roster and going out and addressing the veteran quarterback situation that way?
Yeah, he brought that up as a scenario. Yeah. As in, you don't know what a team desperate to get up there to get a quarterback would be willing to give. Like a Raiders team that's won back-to-back games and now have a barely a top 10 pick, much less the number 1 or 2 pick.
Yeah.
So how desperate could they be to move up, and could you lean into that? So I think his whole point was, if the Titans do end up with a top 2 pick, their phones are going to be blowing up, and there are going to be a ton of possibilities.
I'm honestly more inclined to agree with that logic than going with one of these quarterbacks. Now, I'm also completely fine with the scenario where they get a viable veteran quarterback to buy themselves time and draft the rookie quarterback. I'm completely fine with them having an Atlanta situation. Now, I don't want, Derek Carr to be paid $180 million is what Kirk Cousins' contract was.
That was the full number, yeah.
Yeah, $100 million guaranteed. $100 million guaranteed still. $100 million guaranteed. No, thank you. Especially with the spike in cap hits that this team is getting ready to experience with Ridley, with Snead, with Cush, with a couple of those players that they added this past offseason. I'm completely fine with a viable veteran and a first-round pick at quarterback, provided that it's the correct first-round pick at quarterback, provided that you're sold on that first-round pick at quarterback, because I'm for patience. I know that I've been very, very hard on them for being as catastrophic as they have been this year, but on the whole, patience at the quarterback position is the thing that is being most cast aside by the most amount of NFL organizations. And I think if you have a plan, and if that plan is well executed, and if you believe in that plan and continue to go about it incrementally and have the full support of everybody on board, like you got to be on the same page with all this stuff, then I'm fine with that scenario playing out. I'm also fine with building the best possible team and finding a Darnold, Baker. I mean, did you see the stat that came out about the 2021, or I guess it would have been the 2019 quarterback class, and how well they're doing right now? It's the best quarterback draft class in 20 years by the numbers. Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, Josh Allen, and Lamar Jackson. Now, it took Baker and Sam Darnold.
That's 2018.
Longer. Is it 2018?
That's the 2018 class.
2018. Apologies. 2018. Mayfield, Darnold, Allen, Jackson. Not Allen Jackson, but Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. Collectively have accounted for the best quarterback draft class in 2 decades. And 2 of them, I mean, you could argue that they hit right away because they played. Well, we talked about this. Do you remember who the quarterback that was starting over Josh Allen was the year that he was drafted?
Who was it?
VFL or VFL now?
Oh, the Peterman.
The Peterman. So the Peterman was the Bills' starting quarterback until the Peterman was a disaster, and they put Josh Allen in and just said, all right, let's ride.
And he had his struggles.
And Flacco was the starting quarterback when Lamar Jackson was drafted, and then Flacco wasn't playing great football. He also, I believe, had an injury that saw Lamar get into the lineup, and Lamar ended up starting a playoff game.
And had his struggles.
And they didn't win, right? They had obvious struggles. Those 2 didn't click right away, but those teams were committed to feeling it out with those guys. Baker and Darnold took completely different paths. Imagine the 2 of them on the Carolina Panthers roster 3 years ago. And how
I don't have to imagine it.
I mean, it was a thing. And they were both terrible. And then Baker goes on to do excellent things in Tampa Bay. Sam Darnold goes on to, I mean, you're not going to put him in the MVP conversation this year. But Sam Darnold has played excellent football, the best of his career, because it just took the proper support system around him for that talent to come to the forefront. So there is no one set way that you have to go about this year. But you need to learn from history and trying to put yourself in the best possible position to succeed and be completely sold on the idea of one of these rookie quarterbacks, no matter how it is that you build around them, if that is the path that you are going to take. If you have any shred of doubt about Cam Ward or Shadeur Sanders, do not take them.
Well, no, you're going to have doubt about somebody. I mean, there are doubts. There's always doubts. There's no such thing as a surefire, can't-miss quarterback prospect. It doesn't exist. But Trevor Lawrence was the closest thing to it. I mean, it doesn't exist.
Well, I mean, you could argue Manning, Luck, those kind of guys, like Lawrence was thought of as the best prospect since those guys.
Yeah, fair enough. But no, of course you're going to have concerns and doubts, and there's cons that come with the pros.
Not if you're a team that's already sweating it or an organization that's already sweating job security.
But there has to be conviction. There does have to be conviction. If you don't think you can win with either of those guys, then I don't think you draft a quarterback for the sake of drafting a quarterback. Although, like I said yesterday, it's very rare to see a team with a top 2 pick and a need at quarterback not take a quarterback. And I had a lot of folks throwing examples at me of teams that had a need at quarterback and didn't take one with a top pick, but they did that with hindsight, the benefit of hindsight. Well, the Broncos had a need at quarterback. They had Tim Tebow, and they took Von Miller. Okay, Tim Tebow was a first-round pick the year prior. The answer was not final on Tim Tebow. Washington had a top pick. They took Chase Young. They had a need at quarterback. They had Dwayne Haskins on the roster. Dwayne Haskins was a first-round pick the year prior. They did not have their answer on Dwayne Haskins. They thought he could be the guy. The Titans have their answer on Will Levis, right? They know
They've
that
made
Mason
their
Rudolph
for sure.
Yes,
they'll trot him out there and they'll say it's one last chance. And I saw some people like Ian Rappaport and Tom Pelissero quote tweeting and said one last opportunity for Will Levis to prove himself. No, that's done. It was done when they sat him down.
So my question is, can they toe the line? If they end up with the top 2 pick, who knows what's going to happen on Sunday, and it could totally change the conversation. But if they end up with
can you imagine if we're talking about the 7th overall pick and a damn tackle again?
Because you're talking about the quarterback position, you're going one of 3 paths, right? You're either next year starting the rookie that you take, either Sanders or Ward, whoever, or you're rolling with the vet. You're rolling with the Derek Carr. I mean, you name whichever veteran quarterback stopgap to bring some stability. Okay, the rookie, both pose risks, right, for Brian Callahan. The rookie could have his early struggles and could be too little too late for you. The veteran could get you back to a stable place, could get you to a 7-10 and an 8-9, which obviously would be a great jump, a big improvement. But then you're even further away from finding your long-term solution at the quarterback position. Will they have the ability to toe the line of veteran to bring the stability with a rookie to have promise for the future? That's what this whole offseason is about for me. And that remains to be seen. In terms of the veteran, the question every NFL team that needs a quarterback will be asking themselves this offseason, especially the ones that are not picking in the top two. All right, who's the next Sam Darnold? Who's the next Baker Mayfield? Is it Justin Fields? I don't know where else do you go on that list? That's going to be a huge
Wilson.
part of the process. Yeah, I mean, people scoff
Trey
at
Lance.
it. Yep. Yeah. Well.
I mean, this year. I mean, but
neither of those guys were the prospects Darnold and Baker were. To be fair, coming out.
Fair enough. Fair, especially Lance. That was as big a crapshoot as any you've seen a team take, and that went to the most the most capable of handling a situation like that in Kyle Shanahan. Who, I mean, how many different quarterbacks did they try to start over Purdy? Because they definitely gave Trey Lance the opportunity over Purdy.
Yeah, it was Jimmy. It was Trey. Have you heard Kyle Shanahan talk about that? As Bama's coming back into this, Jalen Milroe.
Well, the weather quit.
Yeah, it looks beautiful now. My goodness, this was a monsoon. Bama players were slipping. And then it's nice and shiny, and Bama's about to score again to make it a 2-point game before halftime. Have you heard what Kyle Shanahan has said about that?
I don't think so.
In Mike Silver's, I believe it was in Mike Silver's latest book, which is all about the Shanahan-McVay coaching tree.
You read a book?
No, Zach Lyons read it, and he's been obsessed with it and telling me all about it. But I am trying to read more. But Shanahan talked about he let himself he overthought that process. He has said he was sold on Mac Jones. And then there was just too much time between that point and the NFL draft, and he let himself talk himself into Trey Lance, and it's a huge regret of his. So that's always kind of
sure. Trey Lance feels great about that being in print.
I mean, the guy threw 5 interceptions in a preseason game with the Cowboys, a third stringer down there. So that's going to be the question and a huge theme of the offseason, right? Who's the next Sam Darnold? Who's the next Baker Mayfield?
Yeah, and that's something that has to be taken into consideration. But again, it's not about, well, who's the next guy? It's which team is properly equipped to turn the next guy into Darnold or Baker or Geno or something else. To me, the player matters, right? The player's ability, the player's ceiling, the player's talent level, the player's ability to operate in a certain kind of system, all that matters. But it's not to me about which player is the next one of those. It's about who's the next Minnesota Vikings? Who's the next Tampa Bay Buccaneers? There are so many different ways that this is being put on the player, specifically on the quarterback and their success, when it is really about the surrounding parts and the quarterback being properly supported. That, I think, is the thing that Titans fans have to keep in their back of their minds, and people will lose sight of that, and we're going to have to repeat that 7,000 times between now and April, the end of April, when this draft finally mercifully takes place, and we can talk about actual players on actual teams again, instead of all the hypotheticals and mock drafts and Twitter rumors and fake reports and all the other crap we're going to have to sift through. But it's about who's the next functional organization, stabilized organization that is ready for a player like that to elevate them, as opposed to putting that onus on the player to elevate you if you're not ready to be taken to that next level. That is exactly the thing that Kevin O'Connell was preaching about before this season started.
And maybe for Justin Fields, it is Pittsburgh.
It might well be. If I was Pittsburgh, I wouldn't let him go.
That's what I'm saying. And look, if Pittsburgh wants to roll with Russell Wilson next year, Justin Fields, it'll be his prerogative to go wherever he feels is the best situation for him. But man, it's hard for me to think of a more functional, more stable place for Justin Fields to get that second win than the Pittsburgh Steelers.
I wouldn't want to go anywhere else if I'm Justin Fields.
Well, yeah, it's easy to say. And then Pittsburgh says we want to start Russ next year, and then you've got X team wanting to pay you, I don't know, $20 million. I don't know what Justin Fields is going to be worth.
But yeah, I mean, it requires some foresight. That Justin Fields is how old? Is he 25 yet? That would be difficult foresight for a young player to have for sure. But
he is 25.
I would use this team most recently as an example of the money doesn't lead to happiness always. The money can turn you and your happiness on its head, because if you are not equipped and if you are just spending freely that way without consideration of how are all these things going to work, then yeah, you got the money and that can cure a lot of your unhappiness, but it can't completely resolve it. 615-737-1045 is the number if you want to join the conversation. You can jump on in there. How about Alex next?
Hey, guys, I got a late candidate for biggest oh no in sports.
Mm-hmm.
The guy that just called saying you can build a team around Jacoby Brissett. Go get Jacoby and build around him.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Did I hear that correctly? Like, is that what he said? Like, he was talking
He said
about
Marcus Mariota, Jacoby Brissett. Who was the third one?
Oh, he mentioned Geno.
Who was on a completely different plane and playing as high of a level as any quarterback out there, really.
I mean, the journeyman back.
That's insane. That's an insane statement by you.
Brother, please watch Geno Smith and tell me that he is not.
As high as the level as any quarterback out there.
Geno has overcome a bad offensive system, a terrible offensive line, and a malcontent in DK Metcalf. Geno Smith gets all the credit in the world.
Absolutely. But why you got to go all the way to as high a level as any quarterback? We don't get stuck here.
He's a really, really good
Joe
Geno
Burrow
Smith.
Do things that's never been done before.
Well, yeah,
come on, man.
That's fair. No, that's fair. Burrow's a good example of that. You're right. Zach is next.
Oh, yes. Hi, guys. Big fan of the show. I'm 31 years old. I've been a Titans fan my whole life. I want to throw out one scenario here and get your thoughts on this. Regardless of keeping Brinker, Carthon, and Callahan for next year, you know, there's a lot of opinions on that. But my scenario that kind of worries me about next year is, say you keep those guys, which things are kind of maybe pointing that way. What happens if you draft a Shadeur or Ward, and then by week 5 or 6, they're on a coaching staff whose job security they're going to prioritize over developing a young quarterback? Then what happens if in 2025 you're 0-5, 1-6? They're going to bench that quarterback because that's what coaches on the hot seat do. Then now your coaches are out of a job because you have 4 wins on the year, and also you've killed the development of a young rookie quarterback. That's a scenario I'm very scared about next year. I want to know what y'all's thoughts on that and how realistic of a possibility is that?
Oh, it's so real. I mean, that's so real.
Well, it happens all the time in the NFL.
It literally happens.
Caleb Williams this year, happened to Trevor
year.
Lawrence with Urban Meyer. It happens all the time.
No, I mean, again, bad organizations stay bad for reasons. And you point at the very, very top for the people reactionary in their decision-making on that. It's incumbent upon coaches and general managers to stick with a plan and have a level of patience and properly prioritize development. But it's also on owners, and owners don't usually care or don't have to care. I mean, some of them care. Some of them don't. Last call for phone calls. If you got them, we'll update the polls coming up next.
I love living in Middle Tennessee. We've got great restaurants, entertainment, sports, and one of the nation's top Ford dealers right here in our backyard. Two Rivers Ford. Remember that name. Two Rivers has been a staple in our community since 1983. They're locally owned. They have a non-commissioned sales team, and they sell below MSRP. They've been doing business with integrity for decades. Two Rivers Ford, the South's most trusted Ford dealer.
Last call for phone calls, 615-737-1045. If you got them before we update the polls. If you want to jump in, you can do so. Of course, if you don't get in with us, you got Blaine and Zach, you got 3HL coming up next to round out your 2024. Mike is next. Hey, Mike.
Hey, Buck.
Hey.
I had a question. If you take Travis Hunter away from Shadeur Sanders, is he really a number 2 pick?
Well, I mean, he's a quarterback, so there would be some level of discussion. Now, I appreciate the call. Nate Washington, former Titans player, former Steelers player, pointed this out on Twitter, that if you draft Shadeur, you better get him some weapons. I try not to let that bowl game carry too much weight, because it was definitely not Shadeur's game. I rewatched that last night. That was such a mess between the BYU quarterback, between the onside kick in the first quarter, between the sacks that Shadeur was taking. It was a really, really, it was a fun game. I don't know if it was a well-played game on either side, but it was a fun one. And BYU kind of handled Colorado pretty well. But Travis Hunter and Shadeur gave them a chance. No way to answer that question until you see them. But you know, you're dealing with prospects that have some deficiencies here, whether it's Ward or Shadeur. Again, you have to have conviction on these two players if you're going to put them in position to succeed, and you have to have the support system in place for them to succeed. Otherwise, you're just going to be another cautionary tale about a high draft pick on a bad football team that ends up going on somewhere else to play better football. Bill is next.
Hey, Buck.
Hey.
Got a fail-proof strategy by the Titans.
I love fail-proof.
I mean, so in Dwight Schrute's words, when you think about doing something stupid, don't do that. So if you're going to think about, I'm going to draft Will Levis, do the opposite. So whatever they want to do, just do the opposite, and that ought to be a successful strategy going forward.
Just fade themselves. You're advocating for, Bill, huh?
Yes, just do the opposite of what you think you should do. So if you want to draft Cam Ward, then don't do that. I mean, they are complete and total, utter idiots. Thank you.
Thank you for the call, Bill. I have no way to push back on that. If you want to draft Will Levis, just don't. That's what Lucas was saying in the whole lead up. And none of you wanted to listen. And then he got pressured into writing an apology poem to Levis, and now he won't retract it, so he's got to stand on it.
It just feels mean.
It does. He has been through enough. Again,
I was not this one beacon, me against the world on, not liking Levis as a prospect.
No, I know.
It wasn't exactly a unique opinion.
It would be mean. What's meaner, you retracting the apology or them continuing to run that mayonnaise commercial when Duke's already has a better one out there? Have you seen the Duke's mayonnaise commercial? How happy is Duke's, by the way? They're just scoffing at the fools at Hellman's. Look at you. Look at how much money you dumped into that to be running that on Monday Night Football for a quarterback that's been benched for 3 weeks.
Cash is still clearing, I assume.
No, for sure. Listen,
check is still cashing. Proper way to say that.
God knows we weren't professional broadcasters in 2024. No reason to expect that it's going to change in 2025 at this point in time. But, it does feel cruel. It ran again last night, and every time I look up and see it, I feel bad for him. I shouldn't, because there's a lot of money associated with that, and he's right to make as much money as he can at this point in time as somebody who is, going to be a backup for the foreseeable future in Will Levis, but it still makes me cringe. I wonder how much longer of a runtime it's got left. Surely at the end of the football season it's done. Yeah, they're not going to keep running that in 20.
You would think.
I don't know. All right. Polls?
Crazy that poll update is about 2 years old at this point. He says, I haven't had an update in 2023 yet. We're a few hours away from 2025.
Oh, I didn't even notice that. Wait, why are we still running that? What if it says in 2023?
Like that one. Polls are presented by Two Rivers Ford, the South's most trusted Ford dealer. How far do you expect the Lions to go in the playoffs? Most of the votes are going Super Bowl, 43.8%. 42% say NFC Championship. 12.5% go divisional round. 1.6% say wild card round.
Eagles are the more well-rounded NFC team just because the Lions' defense has been ravaged. But I don't know, man. If you're capable of scoring 40 points on opponents this year, going undefeated on the road, doing it 5 different times, having that level of offensive output this year, I got to think that you can hang with anybody. But Eagles feel like the safer pick. The Lions would be the more fun one.
It's going to be interesting. They can't get a stop. They got like 2 stops yesterday, and it was Kirby Joseph intercepting the ball.
Yeah, but the other part of that, and I saw somebody bring this up, I can't remember who on Twitter I saw bring this up, but they didn't have McCaffrey available, obviously, last night, and they didn't have, what's the other one's name, Jordan Mason? The other running back?
The Gallatin native.
For the Niners. So that might have impacted how much they were throwing the ball, because they are a run-based football team that was trying to throw it all over the yard.
Brock Purdy had a career high.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So I don't know how much that impacted it, how much less willing to lean on their run game that was. They were having success through every time I looked up, Ricky Pearsall was running just wide the hell open through the Lions secondary. But I do think that it probably worked to their detriment at a certain point.
Which college football playoff favorite should be on the higher upset alert this week? 57% are going with Penn State as they take on Boise over Texas being on upset alert against Arizona State.
Yeah, Penn State will be the most popular upset pick, and James Franklin wins games that he's favored in, so we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. What is your concern level with the Vols' current transfer portal situation? 42.3% say they are uneasy. 21% say they're not worried yet. 19.7% are saying we'll be fine. 16.8%, though, say full-blown panic mode.
A lot of you are uneasy because you won't log off the internet, and you see things like Nico's post, and then you try to turn it into something that it's probably not.
No, uneasy, I think. You can say the program is in a very good state, far better than it was for 15 years, and also say, okay, are they capable of doing the things to take it to the next level? And there are things that need to happen this offseason in the portal in terms of talent acquisition that, it remains to be seen if they will happen.
That's what happens when you have expectations. Yep. There's fun with the fear, but there's also fear that comes with the fun.
Whose seat do you think is hotter, Brian Callahan or Rand Carthon? 57% go Carthon, 43% say Callahan. Jason is in the reply saying neither, not even lukewarm. Daniel says neither. I think next season will be when the seat starts to heat up if they cannot turn it around.
No, you're 3-13. Everybody's, being scrutinized at 3-13.
There is a level of warmth, even if it's just when you're...
it's the first setting on your seat heater in your car.
Exactly.
Not the third, it's the first. Not the one that makes you sweat 5 seconds into turning it on.
Yeah. I think any organization, 3-13,
Correct.
like no matter, where you are and I think it'd be a little... you can't just say, nope, there's no danger whatsoever. All bets are off, especially if they lose Sunday, but I don't think it's going to happen.
Carthon more than Callahan.
Those are the polls.
That's the show. We appreciate you guys hanging out with us as always. We're off tomorrow. We'll touch base back with you on Thursday. No prime time, obviously, tonight or tomorrow. We'll look forward to catching back up with you in 2025. Blaine and Zach are coming up next.